Okay, we good to go, Anne? Okay, evening everyone. This is the meeting of the council which is being held remotely. The meeting is being recorded and streamed via YouTube, where members of the public are able to watch the meeting. Please note that any comments posted on the chat feed of the council's YouTube page during the recording of this meeting will not be monitored by the council. The recording will be available on the council's website following the meeting. All members have been provided with a remote committee guidance note prior to the meeting. Please can these be adhered to during the remote meeting. Points include, but are not limited to, all participants will be muted at the start of the meeting and will be asked to unmute when being called to speak. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand in order I'm aware that you actually wish to speak. You can either do that electronically or physically. If I don't see you, repeat the process. All mobile devices should be switched off or set to silent so that the meeting is not interrupted by ringtones. For each item, officers will present the report and then the committee will discuss it, after which, if there are any group leaders, deputy leaders present, they will be asked if they have any comments to make. I don't think we've got anyone on, have we? In terms of leaders, deputy leaders?
No.
No. Okay, thank you very much, and welcome everyone, particularly the external guests. Just very quickly from me before we get into the business of the meeting, the last meeting of this committee went on till gone 11:30. Now, the last thing I want to do is restrict or limit genuine debate and discussion. But I do think perhaps some of us, myself included, need to rein it in a bit. So there will be no anecdotes from Everton's historic trips to Wembley from me tonight, and I hope other people will be as concise as they can be. And I hope you'll take that in the spirit it's meant. In terms of apologies, we've got apologies from Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Kirkman is substituting. I'm assuming, Anne, that's it in terms of apologies. Any declarations of interest? I think Councillor Buckley's indicating, Anne.
Yes, Chairman, just as a double-headed member of Essex County Council, I think that will overlap with item 9 in particular. Could have a non-pecuniary interest in a couple of the other items, but item 9 particularly.
Appreciated, Councillor Buckley. I mean, I take your point. I don't think there's a huge conflict of interest there, but fine. And I'm guessing, Councillor Davis, you can just nod. You want to probably...
That's correct. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. Well done. Thank you. Okay. The minutes of the last meeting are page 5 to 12 of the agenda. I'd like to just move to record them as an accurate record of the minutes, unless anyone has any points they want to raise in terms of the minutes. I'm not seeing anyone. Oh, hang on, I am seeing someone. Councillor Sargent, surprise, but there you go. Yeah, if you could raise whatever your issue is, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Under item 11, the work programme, where I raised the item of a request that community associations be included in our work programme, in our future work programme. And you stated that you would go away and decide. I mean, I don't know how you reached that conclusion, because I thought it was down to a committee vote, but I know it's not in the work programme. So therefore I shall be voting against the minutes. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's a surprise. Right, fine. You've made that clear. Can we go to the vote, please? I vote in favour of the minutes being recorded as an accurate representation. Councillor Davis.
In favour.
Councillor Kirkman.
Abstain.
Councillor Brockman.
In favour.
Councillor Buckley.
Against.
Councillor Sargent.
Against.
Councillor Henry. Councillor Jeffrey, sorry, I do apologise.
Against.
Okay, if my maths is right, that's 3-3. So I've used my casting vote in favour. The minutes are carried as an accurate record. Thank you very much. Moving on to the work programme, are there any issues relating to the work programme apart from the one that Councillor Sargent has already raised? I'm not seeing anyone. Oh no, Councillor Sargent. Councillor Sargent.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. As I said just a little while ago, I don't find community associations on the work programme.
Councillor Sargent.
Can you get, because it's recorded in the minutes, but it's not, so it never got voted on. We did not vote on it on the last meeting. You said you take it away, but as I understand from the actual report, it's up to us to vote on it. And considering that tomorrow evening's council meeting, the leader has a motion on community centres and halls, as I've said to this committee on a number of occasions, community associations run village halls and should be classed as small businesses because they are classed, they pay bills as small businesses, and I'd like them to be recognised as such and put them on our work programme.
Councillor Sargent, not for the first time, I am a little confused. Every time you seem to bring this subject matter up, and it's not just me that thinks this, it's council officers as well, the goalposts seem to move somewhat. Now, I'm not a difficult person. You know, if I can help, I will. So what I suggest you do is after the meeting, at some point when convenient, you actually send an email to myself and Anne explaining what it is you want doing, because like I say, we've had about 3 or 4 different versions so far. I'm not against what I think you're suggesting in principle. I just want to be clear what it is. Okay?
No, it's not okay, Chairman. I'm not prepared to do that. I've asked for an item. I've said I've not confused anybody. I've said the same thing meeting after meeting.
Well, it's not just me. Can you mute the councillor, Anne? It's not just me that thinks that. I've made that clear. There seems to be a genuine misunderstanding on what you want on. I will take it away. If it is relevant, I will put it on the work programme, but I want you to clarify what you're asking for, because at the moment, it is not clear. And as I say, it's not just me being stupid here. Other people have misunderstood what you want to achieve. So I would ask you to go away and consider it. And if it is so important, it won't be too arduous to write an email explaining exactly what it is. Or if you'd rather not do that, make a phone call. Yes, but we have got a busy agenda, so I would like to move on. No, I'm saying, and if the councillor, can we listen to the councillor? But I am mindful we've got a lot to get through. If you unmute yourself, Councillor Sargent, I think you'll be able to speak.
This is a member decision. It's a member decision, and I've made it clear what I would like. I would like this committee to vote and put it on the work programme, because if the leader of the council can bring it tomorrow evening as a motion, then I see no reason why we can't tonight have community associations down as small businesses and give them the help and support that they need. That's all I have to say, Chairman, and ask kindly that you take it to the vote. Thank you.
I have nothing against giving community associations the help they need. That's what this administration has been doing. However, what is not clear, as I've said repeatedly now, is what exactly you want on the work programme. So I just want clarification on that. So no, I am not proposing taking it to vote because I don't know what we're voting on, because you've not made it clear persistently. But if you do come up with a credible item work for the work program, then I will happily do that. I genuinely will happily do that. And do we need to vote on the work program?
This is just
Or do we
purely
note
for noting at the moment.
It's for noting. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And like I say, that is a genuine offer. If you send us or speak to Anne with a coherent vision of what you want on the work program, I will take it away, and if possible, I will include it. But I'm not clear at the moment. Councillor Buckley, did you indicate? Can you unmute yourself? You're still on mute. Still on mute.
Hopefully I'm there now, my chair.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, unfortunately the system wouldn't let me unmute. I wasn't going to enter into the debate that you were having with Councillor Sargent, but we have always voted on the work programme in the past, and I would like to propose that we do vote on it, just so that we've got the sake of consistency and we have a record.
Well, Anne, I thought that we were told it was for noting, not work voting on. But Anne, do you want to give any guidance on that?
Yes, if you'd like to continue with the vote, that's
okay. We'll continue with the vote. I'm
not sure if Councillor Brockman's indicated to speak as well.
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. I didn't see. Councillor Brockman, I do apologise.
Yeah, I'll apologise here, but well, I'm not going to apologise. Actually, for once, I'm in agreement with Councillor Sargent. I agree that community associations should be recognised as small businesses. I just wanted to get that one out in the open, and just to let you know my feelings on it. There you go.
No one has said community associations are not being recognised as small businesses. What I need clarity on, though, is what the work programme is actually saying about community associations. So if Councillor Sargent wants to come back and tell me now, then I'm prepared to accept that, but I'm still not clear. Councillor Sargent?
As I said before, Chairman, and I will say again, community associations, as has been pointed out by the Langdon Community Centre, they've been closed down. So therefore, it's ultimately important that community associations are put on this committee agenda for consideration in the future as small businesses, so that they can have the help and support that they require to stop any more community associations or village halls closing down.
Okay, just to be clear, Langdon Community Centre closed down because the local organisers handed the keys back to the council. We have been working with them ever since to find a resolution to the situation. We're confident we will. There will be an ongoing consultation, and you know that full well, Councillor Sargent. So why you felt the need to introduce that, I'm not sure. But anyway, I think I can guess. Actually, in terms of putting community associations on the work programme, yeah, okay, I accept that proposition. I think we're all in agreement, but just for the sake of clarity, I suppose we should vote on it. So I will kick off by voting in favour. Councillor Davis.
Councillor McGowan, can I just clarify that we're voting on the work programme as is?
No, we're voting. Sorry, we're voting on the work programme with the addition that associations.
Okay, thank you. Apologies.
Programme.
Thank you.
I still think it's a little unclear because it's community associations in what sense, but we can work out the detail subsequently. So yeah, so the present work programme with that addition. Yeah, is everyone clear on that? Yeah, looks like it. Okay, so I vote in favour. Councillor Davis.
In favour.
Councillor Kirkman,
In favour.
Councillor Brockman,
In favour.
thank you. Councillor Buckley,
In favour of the amendment and against the work programme.
I mean, I'm sorry, Councillor Buckley, that is ludicrous, and you know it's ludicrous. Anyway, Councillor Sargent,
I'm in favour of the community association being put on the work programme.
but what about the work programme? You can't vote on one and not the other. You've got to vote on the work programme as amended.
Well, there was nothing before the community association was put on here. It was just for noting. There was no vote.
And
So
I agreed to have a vote.
Yeah, so you agreed to have a vote on the community associations being put on. That's what we're voting for. Community associations being put on the agenda, on the work programme agenda, and I vote in favour of that. Thank you.
Okay. In which case, Councillor Buckley, just to check, you're voting in favour of the community associations being put on the work programme and noting the work programme, because we're not voting on the work programme.
I'm in favour of the amendment and I will abstain on the work programme if that makes you feel more comfortable.
No, but we're not voting on it. You've just heard your colleague, right? And Councillor Jeffrey.
Same as my colleague, Chairman, for the amendment, and I'll abstain on the work programme.
As I've said several times now, we're not voting on the work programme. The work programme was for noting, but just for clarity, Anne, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the work programme as is stands with the addition of community associations to it, the details of which to be worked out at some future date. Anne, can you just indicate that you're happy with that? Don't know where, I can't see you, Anne. Yeah, you're nodding, yeah? Right, okay, thank you. And as I would say on that, you know, I think, again, we've wasted 10 minutes that didn't need to be wasted there. In terms of the community associations, this administration is working hard with all of our community organisations, and I fail to see why you're trying to make political capital out of that when you know that is the case. Anyway, on that happy note, hand over to Alan Neville, who's here from Greater Anglia. I'm sure we've all got lots of questions, issues, things to discuss with in terms of Greater Anglia. Obviously, hugely important in terms of the borough. And just to point out to Councillor Buckley, he doubted that we would get someone from Greater Anglia. So well done, Alan, for coming. You're very welcome. And I'll hand over to you to make your presentation.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for inviting me tonight. I must admit the last few minutes have been very, very interesting indeed, but I can't pretend to fully understand the greater meaning of it all, actually. But no.
Don't worry, Alan. Very few people do, if any.
Okay, so just to introduce myself, I am the stakeholder manager for Greater Anglia. I'm also the community and customer engagement manager for Greater Anglia. I also manage the community rail partnerships throughout our company, and the Wickford and Billericay areas are within the Essex and South Suffolk CRP, and I also manage all station adoption activities as well throughout Greater Anglia. So my role, if you like, is fourfold. I'm not exactly a new person to the railway, because in actual fact, next week I will have done 41 years on the railway, actually. So it's been an absolutely great time, love my job, and I've got no plans to retire at the moment. However, it has to be said that the last year has been extremely challenging in every respect, as it has for all of us, actually. And I want to sort of explore one or two of those themes, and I'm sure there'll be some really fascinating questions as a result. So I will just talk about things that are happening very locally to Wickford and especially Wickford actually, and then I'll move on to some more company news. I'm very conscious of the fact that you've had C2C on your last meeting, or your January meeting. So it'd be interesting to see. Obviously, since January, things have moved forward quite a bit. We've now got the map to the roadmap to recovery. So we've got some key dates in there actually, and obviously I want to sort of talk about the what we're calling building back better. So first of all, looking at things locally at Wickford, Wickford Station is actually soon to be demolished to enable the extension of the bay platform at Wickford, which is essentially the platform used for trains to Southminster. And we're going to construct a new modern station building as well at Wickford Station. Full project team involved in that. Obviously, the reason we're doing it is to actually make the platform able to cope with our brand new 5-coach Class 720 train, which will is already in operation on the Southend line. But obviously, as soon as the rebuild happens, we'll be able to use that new bay platform at Wickford. So in terms of the phases, we've done some preparatory work already. The completion of demolition work on the station building will occur by early July of this year. And then the next phase starts, which will obviously the building of the new station and the main works taking place thereafter. I've got some sort of key times and key dates when work will take place. Happy to, after this meeting, happy to send any details, if there's more complex questions on this, happy to send that information in. But essentially, obviously there's a lot of work involved, like removing the canopy, etc., which is incidentally going to take place over the Easter weekend, actually. Basildon Council will be fully notified about all this work, and obviously local residents will be kept in touch as well, because we do not want to be noisy people, and we want to be good neighbours. In terms of Wickford as well, I'm delighted to also tell you that we have a new station adopter at Wickford. Quite some time ago, I met some people at the station who were concerned about the litter in some of the areas which were out of bounds to us and were within the Network Rail jurisdiction. In an actual fact, there was some litter in the areas of our jurisdiction as well. And we've now got someone come forward, and she started a few weeks ago now, and she's adopting the station. If anyone wants to know any more about our station adoption principles, then please ask in question time. I won't sort of go through it now, but essentially, she's already pointed out some areas which are very litter prone, and I will personally be working with Network Rail to actually solve those issues, because I have very high standards myself. Our company has very high standards, and we want all that area to be absolutely pristine. And incidentally, we have got an adopter at Billericay as well, actually. We've got adopters at both stations. I'd now like to just talk through some company things briefly before I invite some questions. I know you wanted me to concentrate on the future, and obviously it's a future that's absolutely key now following this terrible episode in our lives. In terms of performance, during the whole of the pandemic, right from exactly a year ago, has been extremely high. We've reached a record level now of what we call the moving annual average. That's now at 93.66% punctuality. And that is the highest level we've ever achieved here in East Anglia. And that's been done by the commitment, the resilience and the hard work of everyone, and our partners, Network Rail, and the new train operator and the new train provider, which was called Bombardier, but is now called Alstom. They altered their name a few weeks ago. In actual fact, the punctuality improvement over the last year has risen by 15%. So the improvement is a 15% improvement, which is terrific. I now just want to talk about where we find ourselves in terms of the franchise. So I'm sure you'll know, and obviously it wasn't too different for C2C as well, that we were in a franchise, and obviously the government stepped in, very, very wise decision to support the railways, because ever since the lockdown started, we've been conveying key workers and school children, and obviously a large amount of leisure travel in that period last summer between the lockdowns. The government stepped in and we went into what's something called the Emergency Measures Agreement. And that has now become the Emergency Recovery Measures Agreement. And that means we're working very, very closely all the time with the Department for Transport. What we hope and expect that may lead to is something called a direct award going forward. So the Emergency Recovery Measures Agreement stretches now until September. And as I say, although the future is a little bit unclear at the moment, we hope and we're working towards what's called a direct award. As to what happens after that, I don't think anyone knows at the moment, because it's really subject to what's called the Williams Review, which is an overarching look at how the railway is structured. But at the moment, we're in what's called the ERMA, the ERMA. So last year, what it's meant to is, right from the very beginning, we actually, an enormous concentration on train cleaning. We've introduced a whole series of different measures, from fogging guns to hand devices to everything, to keep our trains clean and pristine. And I don't think there's been a single case on our company or any company actually of people actually catching COVID from a train. I myself have travelled several times, not a lot, but several times, because obviously I'm working from home at the moment. But on the times I've travelled, our trains have been absolutely immaculate, and we've actually received quite a lot of praise. And that is the way going forward as well. So I want everyone to know that when we get that release date and we can travel more, in an actual fact, people will find our trains clean, very clean indeed. The other thing, obviously, it's been a feature of the last 12 months has been several timetable alterations to cope with the lockdowns. So in actual fact, in lockdown 1, we went from a weekday timetable to a Saturday timetable to a Sunday timetable. And then when numbers started going up, we went the other direction. At the moment, we've gone back down again, and we're pretty much on a sort of modified Saturday timetable. But obviously now we've got the key dates. They're all, I think, fixed in our minds. And obviously we're working very closely with the Department for Transport and the Rail Delivery Group on what happens next, because obviously we're aware that within the next few weeks there are some key dates, which will actually mean that more people will begin to travel, and that obviously will influence the service we run. So we're gearing very much to that and working very closely with the Department for Transport, as indeed are all the other train operators as well. And obviously there's been some key dates, for example, when school children went back to school. And obviously we've been doing very, very close monitoring of numbers to make sure we've got adequate stock and we can maintain adequate. And I have to say it's worked very, very well, and an enormous amount of work gone into that and continues to go into that to ensure that we balance the social distancing side of life with the actual numbers that are travelling. And there's been, as I say, a lot of praise about what we've actually done. So in terms of the timetable, that, if you like, is the past, and obviously moving forward, as I say, we've got our eye on those key dates and we'll adjust accordingly. Moving forward as well, we're in timetable consultation mode at the moment in regards to the December 21 timetable. And whilst a lot of that obviously is allied to what happens in the country and the national situation, we do plan, as I say, some changes in December. We went out to consultation before Christmas. We've got a lot of replies back from key stakeholders. And at the moment, all that is being sifted, basically. So I can't tell you anything at all. Obviously, we want to go back to a normal Saturdays accepted timetable on the Southend line with the frequency it offers. And we may have the opportunity as well, given the fact that our new Class 720 train, which is now starting to come into operation, is extremely nippy. It's got huge amounts more capacity for passengers, and it may give us the opportunity to shave 1 or 2 minutes off journey times. If you couple that with the fact that Network Rail over the last couple of years have completely replaced the overhead wires between London and Southend, those of you who've tried to travel in the last couple of years will know only too full well that most weekends were, for a long, long period, were bus operation. But that work's now been done now. And as I say, we've got a fantastic, resilient overhead wire structure, and we've got great new trains coming to the route, which, as I say, have got much greater capacity. They've also got plug points, all the mod cons, good customer information systems, etc., on board those trains. So I just want to talk now a little bit about the future now. There's a phrase that keeps getting used called building back better. And what we want is for the railway to be even better than it was before. There's a lot of aspects to that, marketing being one, and I'm sure there may be some questions about that. We're fully aware of the fact there's been a shift, obviously, very big shift, a shift in totality to home working, just about, apart from key workers. What we think the future will be a lot of 3 and 2 day workings. So in other words, 3 days at home, 2 days in the office, and vice versa. I personally don't believe that everyone wants to spend the rest of their lives at home working, because I think we're all social beings. We want to see our colleagues. We need to work with our colleagues. And obviously, you know, we need to see each other. And there's the economy of London to bear in mind as well. So I think the future will be flexibility. That's no doubt. I think the future for leisure travel is extremely bright indeed, actually, especially given the environmental argument, which of course Prince Charles said would be around when COVID was long dead. And that is very, very true, of course. So at the back of all that, you've probably heard some very positive announcements from the government about the possibilities of new lines, about the possibilities of new stations in the country, actually. And I think there's a great desire, as I say, to build back better, to make the railway much, much better than it was before. And it was obviously a very, very growth industry. I started my railway career in 1980 when it was a declining industry, and 40 years on, it's become completely the opposite. It's become a growth industry. And I think despite COVID, it's got a very, very long way to travel now as well. It's going to become ever more successful. So building back better is a key word. But as I say, at the moment, we've got the roadmap for recovery. We've got the key dates, which we're working towards and feeling our way against. And obviously, our customers have got some key concerns about coming back. What are their concerns? So obviously, I've covered the cleaning issue. As I say, that's covered. And as I say, we're doing more and more work all the time in terms of cleaning. We don't know when social distancing will become a thing of the past. Obviously, I think we all hope that's sooner rather than later. But obviously, that's with us at the moment. Another concern for the customer will undoubtedly be value for money. So we're working very, very closely with the Department for Transport on flexibility of tickets. I can't give you any key announcements tonight, but we are working towards flexibility of tickets. We're working about flexibility of commuters' tickets, i.e. the season ticket, and there will be all sorts of initiatives, I know, coming forward in regards to leisure travel and getting people back on trains again. The other thing that people want is simplicity. There's no doubt at all that the ticketing system as it is extremely complex, very, very much too complex. And I believe that in the future, and the not too distant future, then there will be simplifications to the ticket structure. And the other thing, and this has been proved in the last 12 months that we can actually do it, is the punctuality message as well. People will want to come back to their stations. They will expect their stations to be clean. They will expect their stations to have the highest standards, and they will expect a punchable, reliable service. And that's what we want to promise our customers going forward. I mentioned the new trains. So we've got our new Class 720 train, as I say, already in operation on the Southend line. We're very proud of it. We've had some really great customer accolades for it already. As I say, it's got all mod cons on board, and it's got much extra seating capacity as well. So just before I close and invite your questions, I'd just like to pay a big message of thanks to our staff, actually. I mean, obviously, for us all, it's been the most difficult of periods. The last year was not foreseen by any of us, but our staff have been in the front line, and they've just been the most amazing people on this earth, really and truly, along with the National Health Service and all other key workers. They've put themselves in the line of fire. They've put themselves, obviously, with the possibility of getting COVID themselves. Fortunately, very few did. But in actual fact, as I say, they've been amazing, absolutely amazing. And I am so proud, I have to tell you tonight, to be a member of railway staff, because, as I say, they've been the most resilient human beings, along with all the other key workers on this earth, really and truly. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me. And I do hope now there's some really interesting and stimulating questions.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Alan. Covered a lot of ground there, and I echo your comments about your staff and all key workers. I think we all owe them a debt of gratitude, and I think probably we've rethought, reconfigured how we view some sections of the workforce, and I hope that Greater Anglia will have a better relationship with its unions as a result of this, because I think the unions, to be fair, not everyone on this call will agree, but hopefully you will, have worked hard to affect change, keep people safe, keep the members safe.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely correct. And I'm a member of one of the rail unions myself, actually. And yes, they've been extremely supportive all along the way, actually. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Alan. I appreciate it. And I've just got a couple of quick questions, because I'm sure lots of other people have as well, so I don't want to take too long. In terms of the comment you made about the punctuality rate going up, listen, that's great, and I don't want to appear cynical, but on a reduced service, wouldn't you expect that to some extent anyway?
Yes.
Yeah,
so,
I'm going on. I'll just finish the other one as well, and you can answer both at the same time.
Yeah.
Again, forgive my ignorance, but how does the emergency recovery measure agreement differ from its predecessor?
Okay. Right. Well, first of all, yes, I mean, you would expect that if we're conveying less people and less services, then punctuality would improve. I mean, I suppose there was a whole chunk of the period during the sort of, if you like, late spring, summer and early autumn when it was pretty much back to normal. However, and you're completely correct, yes, I mean, you would expect punctuality to improve, yes. But even allowing for that, there has been a massive effort on the part of Network Rail and all our staff actually as well. So that is a factor, but I accept absolutely that what you say is true. That, as I say, running less services and conveying less passengers, then obviously, yes, you would expect it to improve. So I'm not going to gloss over it and say it's the most wonderful story ever, and it's all due to something other than that. In terms of the emergency measures agreement and the emergency recovery measures agreement, so the emergency measures agreement obviously was a short-term plan that was put in place very, very quickly and very, very swiftly indeed, it has to be said, last March. I think we were all surprised at the speed which it happened. And I mean, if you contrast it to some other industries like the aviation industry, we've been very, very lucky and very, very fortunate indeed. What the emergency recovery measures agreement does, and as I say, I'm not an expert in it, but if you like, it sets out a roadmap and it sets out some very, very specific stuff within it. So, for example, as part of that, there's a business plan in it. There's a lot of reporting of a lot of stuff to the Department for Transport as well. So, if you like, think of it in terms of the emergency measures agreement being like the emergency, then the recovery measures agreement actually being the plan as to how we move forward out of this year.
Thanks, Alan. I appreciate that. I'd like to say I wasn't seeking to be critical about the punctuality, and any increase in punctuality is always good. So I wasn't.
No, it was a very relevant question, very pertinent question. It's a question you can imagine that I get asked a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm going to start with Councillor Brockman, then Councillor Buckley, then Councillor Jeffrey, all of whom are Wickford councillors. So there may be a theme emerging here. I'm not sure, but I'll go to Eunice first anyway.
Okay, well, thank you, Alan, for a really good report. It's most interesting, actually. I'm one of the Wickford Widows of West Ham supporters. In other words, my husband's a season ticket holder up at Stratford. When they get back to going there, I'm one of the silly cows that sit outside the station in the car waiting for him to get off the train. But I have witnessed sometimes some antisocial behaviour outside the station. What I'd like to know is what you're going to have in place. Are you going to have improved CCTV coverage of the area, etc.?
Well, I can probably get you more details of that separately, Councillor. I'd be very happy. I'm going to give you all my email before I leave tonight, actually, so you can contact me separately, and I will try and get you some specific information on what we're going to do. I mean, in regards to antisocial behaviour, I mean, obviously, unfortunately, what happens at railway stations is very often, of course, what's reflective in society, and very often these youths congregate at stations because they think they're out of the way. And I mean, there is no doubt about it that during the lockdown periods, they were picked off one by one a lot of the time, is because the police observed all the drugs running and such, because they were the only people travelling. But we're very, very concerned about antisocial behaviour at any of our stations, and we do have a thorough process for reporting and recording that data. So if you'd like to email me separately about, if you like, what's happened and what the future holds in relation to CCTV, I mean, certainly, obviously, as part of the station rebuild, we will make sure that all the the CCTV is put back and possibly even improvements made. I've not got the specific details, but I can get those. I can absolutely get those for you, actually, yes. But, we urge any reporting. I mean, the one thing when I spoke about station adoption is the fact that I know you've got the group in Wickford called the Wickford Wombles. I know they did exist. I presume they still do exist. And obviously, there is a great concern, and we want to really smarten that area up. I mean, there's no doubt at all in my mind that if you let standards slip, then it does encourage antisocial behaviour. If you let litter increase, it encourages antisocial behaviour, basically directly. It's a slippery slope, as we all know. So, we will be doing more. And obviously, we do work very, very closely with the British Transport Police as well. So, as I say, I'd invite you to, email me separately, and I can find out and even probably send you plans of what the station will look like, and also details of where the cameras will be.
Lovely, thank you. Yeah, and with the drug runners as well, I mean, we've got a big problem with them coming up and down the start line, so it's great.
Yes, well, I mean, we will. One thing I must note actually is that, you know, we have got staff on the trains as well, and we've got no intention of taking those off in the future where they exist. And I mean, it is well known that there are problems along that line, unfortunately, as there are indeed with the C2C line, and we're determined to stamp it out.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate that. And I don't know if it's good or bad news, Councillor Brockman, but given the giddy heights that West Ham are at the moment, the hubby might be going away for longer next season, you know, further afield. Who knows? Anyway, Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I got 4 or 5 questions for Alan, if I may, but just on your opening comments, I am very pleasantly surprised you turned up, because in the past I used to sit on the rail forum and we used to ask both train operators to turn up and we could never get anybody from this line. So
Really?
I'm going back 10 or 12 years, to be fair, but I am glad you're able to indulge us for the evening, if that's not the wrong expression.
Well, no, it's a pleasure to be here. I mean, I've been in the role now for stakeholder manager now for about a couple of years, actually, and I'm determined to go to you know, I accept all invitations, basically.
Well, I'm sure one in the future then. I have got a number of points, so I'll run through them all and perhaps you can respond to them all, because I know the chairman is keen to get the business done tonight. I'll have to confess, I have not been on a train for over a year because of the pandemic. I'm retired, so basically my travel on a train is for leisure. But for a large part of the last few years, whether it's Crossrail or overhead cables, there's been no weekend service from Wickford. As a consequence, I've travelled from Pitsea, which is, I think, for me, the most convenient station for lots of reasons. And I'd just like to pose a question to you there about the difference in fares, because it is considerably cheaper on C2C, or was a year ago, than it was to travel via Liverpool Street. So I don't know whether with all the change you'll be able to make a comment on that. I was aware that the station itself was going to be demolished and rebuilt. And I would just ask you that I was under the impression that although the facility would be rebuilt, some of the older parts of it would be retained as it is. It goes back to the days when the railway was originally opened. I happen to have an ordnance survey map with me at the moment from 1922, which actually shows it and shows the reservoir for filling the steam trains and so on. But Wickford was a little smaller then.
Councillor Buckley, given you've got a number of questions, can you be a bit pithier, please?
I'll try to, Chairman, just to keep you happy. Second one, you mentioned about the litter around stations, and it's common on every station, I accept that. One of my concerns there is that a lot of it is trackside, and if you look at Wickford, it's between the barrier wall and the Southminster line, and on the opposite platform where the Southminster comes in. So what can you do about trackside safety? Are all staff trackside safety trained? The point about punctuality the chairman's made. C2C, when they came to us, did mention about driver shortages. Does that affect Greater Anglia? The 720, which you mentioned, I haven't yet travelled on, but as an interesting question, I have travelled on the London Underground, and they've removed lots of the seats so that you can cram in more like sardines. Is that how you attract the capacity? The last point I wanted to make was on tickets, and it doesn't seem to make an awful lot of difference if you buy a ticket from Wickford to Liverpool Street or Wickford to Oxford Circus or wherever. But when I've done longer journeys by train, which I do occasionally, they're a lot cheaper if I buy them through the train line. And actually they're cheaper still if I buy them through Great Western Railroad and I don't actually use their service. I have a journey I made to Newcastle, for example. So what can you do to make sure that if I go to the station, I actually get the best value ticket?
Okay, super. Well, I've got all those noted down. So, I mean, in terms of your fact that you've not been on the train for a long time, well, I mean, obviously, you're in common with a lot of other people, and obviously, we need to get you all back and want to get you back, and we will welcome you with open arms when you come back. We're also obviously very aware of the fact that almost, I suppose, up until the lockdown #1 period, then you'd faced weekend after weekend after weekend of basically rail replacement services from Wickford. And we're very aware, obviously, that will have driven some people away, and we've got to fight hard to get you back, and we will, as I say, fight hard to get you back. I mean, unfortunately, it was a period of, if you like, well, I won't say short-term pain. I mean, it wasn't even short-term, but it was long-term pain for long-term gain. The job had to be done. The overhead wires, which were up between London and Southend, were of the 1950s vintage. And as you probably know, they when we got any hot weather at all, they sagged and completely ruined the service. So it had to be replaced. The job's done now. And as I say, we've turned a corner. In terms of the difference in fares between C2C and Greater Anglia, we're very much aware of that. And the problem is historical, and it's the way the fares were set under LTS, basically, London and Tilbury and Southend. And you probably won't believe it, or you probably will, that unfortunately, this historical issue has never, if you like, been put right. And I think that's something we absolutely need to address. And I mean, I promise you that after the meeting tonight, I will make my representations and say, look, this was brought up at the meeting. It might be historical, but look, we need to turn the corner now, and we need to get things back. And I mean, we've now got the advantage of the fact that we've got, if you like, people listening. Everyone knows now that there's got to be ticketing reform. So this is a golden opportunity to do it. But as I say, there are reasons. I've heard it in many quarters, and it is fact. And as I say, it's related to old historical agreements, basically, that were in place, stretching right back to the British Rail era. In terms of Wickford and will older parts retained, I mean, what I will do, as I say, once you've taken my email tonight, if you'd like to email me separately, I will get some plans sent to you so you can see those plans. I can't tell you what will be retained, if anything, but as I say, I will get those plans to you to give you some idea, actually. The litter track side, yes, is a thorn in my side, and it's a thorn in everyone's side. I work very closely with Network Rail, and if I'm told by a station adopter or by the Community Rail Partnership or by any or by a strong customer complaint, and I do deal with some of the more challenging complaints, I guess. I take action with Network Rail, basically. What I can't do, I can't sort of force them to go there like the next day, but I can send them pictures and I can say, look, you know, this is trackside, or this is, if you like, the other side of the boundary fence, and it reflects badly on our station. Please do something about it. Because I'm a strong believer that when someone actually looks at a station, if they're standing on a station, they don't differentiate in their minds which is Greater Anglia leased area and which is Network Rail. They're looking at the whole thing. So if Network Rail have left some of their old piles of sleepers or track or whatever, that detracts from the appearance of the station. So what I'm saying to you is, yes, please report it. I've already seen some pictures of Wickford. I've had them sent by this new adopter, and I'm not happy at all, really and truly. A lot of it is, yes, just outside our boundary, but on the other hand, that makes no odds because it's seen, it's observed. So I want to do something about it, and I will. Driver shortages, I can answer that very quickly. We've got no driver shortages and not likely to have any driver shortages, actually. No, we've got no problems in that respect at all. And in terms of drivers training for the new Class 720 train, that whole programme has gone ahead during COVID, most amazing training programme. A lot of it using driver simulators, you know, when there's been issues of 2 or 3 people in the cab. but there's no shortage of drivers trained on those new trains. No issues at all. The Class 720, I'm delighted to tell you, is not like a certain other train that you mentioned. It's not facing, if you like that, like an underground train. It's in the configuration of 3 and 2 seating. There's plenty of space. It appears spacious, and in actual fact, because the train is an open train, so you can actually see right down the train, it appears very open, very spacious. And in terms of seating, we actually maxed up to the level of comfort we were absolutely allowed to do. So should be no problems. Ticketing online, yes, I'm very conscious of the fact that there's some great deals to be had with Trainline. I think that is a subject that needs to be addressed going forward. The differentials, whether it will or not, will be a decision for the Rail Delivery Group and Department for Transport, because obviously we've got no influence over what Trainline do. But on the other hand, I will, as I say, I promise you, I will mention it in dispatches to the right people.
Thank you. Councillor Buckley, you happy with those responses?
Yeah, that's fine, Chairman, and
Thank you.
yeah, welcome the comments that Mr. Neville has made.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Alan, for coming here today. I've got a couple of questions. One was already picked up by the Chairman. It was just about the improvements of timings. But on your plans, a particular thing that I wanted to ask you about was in terms of parking. What's the sort of Greater Anglers' view on parking provision? I know there's a car park literally pretty much straight opposite the train station. But in terms of, are you increasing your provision from the car park that's to the, if North is heading towards the Swan Pub to the west, so it's literally just on the train station, whether you're increasing provision and whether what prices you're looking at. And the reason I asked that is in terms of mindfulness of parking. Specifically, my ward has the train line run pretty much all along the top, and it goes off to railing. So it's just in terms of when people are parking, they're affecting residential streets along that line. So it's just in the sense that what do you think you can do on that front? And then next, I might forget the name, but it's Mersey Crescent. You've cut back some of the like bushes and shrubs to redo. I think it's Network Rail. They've done it, but they've redone the route, the like barriers, the fencing, but they've cut all the stuff out. So all the shrubbery, etc. So it's just in terms of noise, what's going to be done to try and recompensate for the increased noise that will come from that. And just in terms of litter, it's not just there, it's all the way along the line. And yeah, I look forward to your answers on that.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I'll take the last point first, actually. I mean, Network Rail have done some quite large-scale tree clearances in various places, and regrettably, it has resulted in noise complaints because obviously you've taken away the if you like, the barrier to the sound. And I do know that Network Rail have had a number of complaints about this. What I'm going to invite you to do, if you would, is to say, when I've given my email to you all, that if you would actually just email me specifically about that, Councillor Jeffrey, I will forward it to my colleague in Network Rail, because I'll need you to just put the precise location down, etc. I mean, I'm speaking to you tonight from Cambridge, actually, which is quite a long way from the line. And I must admit, although I know Wickford Station reasonably well, I'm not familiar with some of the other names, street names, etc., that you mentioned. So if you can forward me any photographs or anything that's of that, but as I say, it is something that people are complaining about. The problem is for Network Rail and their clearance is that they if they do it, they're in trouble, and if they don't do it, they're in trouble, because obviously trees and overheads and railway lines don't go too well together. And there's been some horrendous incidents, as you probably know, given the fact we're getting more and more severe weather, where trees have come down and knocked the overheads down, and they've been resting on the tracks, and you know the sort of thing, don't you? Because you've probably been held up yourself because of it. So if they cut down trees, which they do, and then plant other trees to compensate elsewhere to keep Britain treeful, then, as I say, unfortunately, they remove that barrier. And I've just had a very strong complaint come in from another area near Peterborough, actually, whereby the sound barrier has effectively been removed by the removal of trees. So if you can forward me the details to me of that. And I'm also going to invite you also, if you could invite me, if you could just email me about the parking issue as well. I mean, Greater Anglia is committed to, you know, all the way through the pandemic to carrying on all the large scale projects with regards to stations and car parks that it previously set out to do. The only difference at the moment is obviously we have to consult with the Department for Transport on those big schemes because there's a lot of money involved. What I don't know, I must admit, is what the plans for parking are at Whitford going forward. I don't think there's going to be a great deal of change. I would certainly anticipate that obviously, you know, in areas that are in close proximity to the station, that we would obviously, you know, where we've made a bit of a mess with all the construction traffic, etc., that we would make it all right and make it good. But I don't think we're going to change the parking markedly from what it's like at the moment, but I can get you some more specifics on that if you email me. Is that okay?
If you don't mind, Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just in the sense. I'll take the the first point you made. I'll take that first. So, in the sense about the sound barriers, it's just that there's like little holes that's been made where they've sort of done this lovely new metal fencing. So it's just in the sense that putting that back in, so that because on that part of it, the residents actually look out onto it. So I just want to make sure that it gets put back. And yeah, and on the terms of the parking, it's just some residential streets are impacted, and it's just, I thought, were in your plans for the upgrades, whether you were thinking of increasing any parking provision. But I can take this all onto email.
Yes, if you would please, yes, and certainly if you can get me some pictures of this affected area, because the first thing my colleague in Network Rail is going to say is, could you get me some pictures, please, so we can see the specific location. But I will get answers for you, Councillor Jeffrey. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for that. I think Councillor Brockman wants to come back in quickly.
Yeah, just a quick one. I just want to confirm that we're all going to get a copy of the plans on an email.
Yes, I will get you plans. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Don't think anyone else is indicating. So, Alan, thank you very much for joining us. It's been very informative.
I've indicated, Chair. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I do beg your pardon. Sorry, Councillor Kirkman, over to you. Sorry, I didn't see you.
It's okay. Zoom is Zoom. Just a quick question around the 7:30. I had the pleasure of riding in one today as it goes. But basically, I have a question about accessibility, because when I got off the train at Rochford, I'm aware it's not Billericay or Wickford, but literally the gap wasn't just a little gap; it was literally a couple of feet. So I'm wondering what kind of things you've got in place to kind of improve stations along the route, so that people don't have to jump down massive gaps.
Okay, very good question, and thank you very much for it. I mean, we're committed to doing a whole host of things with accessibility, but the problem is, of course, that the big schemes, if you like, the funding streams for the big streams are actually held by the department rather than us. At locations, and there are many locations where stations are on curves, where the platform is a different height to other platforms, etc. You've got so if you like, you've got every sort of differential under the sun, really and truly. And in an ideal world, you'd actually, of course, standardise everything. But I mean, we all know that some stations are built on curves. and some stations would have a slightly different height as well. I mean, it's true to say that on the Swiss-built trains that we've got, I mean, Greater Anglia committed to a brand new fleet on its whole network in its franchise agreements, and that's now coming to pass. And we ordered, if you like, half the trains from Bombardier and half the trains from Stadler in Switzerland. The Swiss trains do have an advantage in that they actually have a sliding step that comes out. So in actual fact, you open the door, the door opens and the step absolutely just slides out. And people are loving that, as you might imagine, because it helps with wheelchairs, it helps with able-bodied people, helps with everyone really and truly. Unfortunately, the trains built by Bombardier, which is now Alstom, they don't have that sliding step. So what we have to do to compensate is ensure that platform signage is good, meets all the requirements, that all the risk assessments are done, all the safe systems of work for that are done. But I mean, you'll understand, obviously, we can't just go along and add another 4 inches to the platform thickness, can we? That's the problem we've got. But one thing we do, of course, is where there is a differential that you've quite rightly pointed out, is make sure that if announcements need to be made about that, then announcements will be made. And they can be made on the train, or they can be made on the station, of course, as well. But as I say, I can't tell you that every station will be immediately compliant, because obviously to do that would cost literally millions of pounds. But what we have to do is do the proper announcements, do the proper risk assessments, etc.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. That answers my question. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just looking. Councillor Brockman, did you want to come back in or not? I'm not sure. No. Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Alan. Really appreciate it. It's been interesting. Covered a lot of ground, and also I think now you've come once. The bad news for you is we will want you to come back again, but not immediately. You'll be glad to know, because I think obviously, you know, we've been through a really strange, unique period, and when the services get back to something resembling normal, there'll probably be a different conversation to be had then, and it'll.
Yes.
I hope you'll be able to join us.
I would love to come back. I'll come back as often as you want me to come back. I promise you that. And I'd just like to give you all my email address, which I promised you as well. So if you'd all got your pens and paper ready.
Well, it's on YouTube, so that's probably not the best idea. But if you send, well, you know, it depends. You might want to do that. But if you send your email address to Anne, she can then.
I will send it to Anne so she can advise all the councillors. Yes, absolutely.
Probably the better option.
I've really enjoyed being with you this evening. It's been a great pleasure to be with you this evening. And yes, please do invite me back, because I'd love to come back. Yeah.
We will. Thank you very much indeed. And again, thank you, because your opposite number at C2C gave a very honest and open account as well, and it is appreciated, which is why it's been such a civilized exchange, because you have been honest with us, and we do appreciate that. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, moving on to agenda item number 6, the Centre for Cities Outlook 2021. We've got Andrew Carter, the Chief Executive for Centre for Cities, to give us a presentation. So I'll hand over to Andrew, and whoever council officer is good, if anyone is assisting him with the presentation. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can someone enable my video? Thank you very much. Thank you, Anne.
Very welcome, by the way. Sorry, I was remiss.
No, it's
extremely welcome.
It's a pleasure. And I've been asked to say a little bit about some analysis that we did and we released in January, which is part of Cities Outlook, which is our annual analysis of the economic performance of the UK's 63 biggest cities and towns. Basildon is one of those. You are 53 out of the 50th out of the 63 places that we look at, and we were looking at trying to get a handle on what we think is happening to the labour market in particular, through the COVID crisis and obviously the pandemic and the ensuing lockdowns, and then how that interacts with the levelling up agenda which the government has set itself when it was elected back in December 2019. So I've got a few slides just to run through. I assume I'm enabled to do that. Is that right? Yeah, perfect. So there's quite a bit of information on each of the slides. There's data and charts, which is the way that we at the Centre for Cities like to do our work. I can make them all available to colleagues afterwards, so you don't have to scribble furiously in order to do that. So my first point, and here I'm showing you claimant count data as of March 2020, so pretty much a year ago, to see where Basildon was in relation to the other 63 or 62 places that we are looking at. And as you can see with the purple arrow, before COVID, Basildon was doing okay. And on a range of indicators, this is the real-time indicator that we're looking at, which is claimant count. But on a range of other indicators, we look at about 40 or 50 indicators that map out various aspects of the economy. Basildon was doing okay. So you can see it's pretty much on the dotted line, which is the national average as it was a year ago. And that put you 35th out of 63 places. Obviously, if you come to the far left, you can see places like Hull, Birmingham, Blackpool, places predominantly in the North and Midlands that even before the pandemic had claimant count rates that were much higher than the national average. And then obviously to the far right, you can see places then that had claimant count rates that were all, at that point were below the national average as well. So it gives you a sense as to Basildon's performance before the pandemic. This chart now shows you, again, that claimant count rate in March 2020 and the degree to which, or the significance to which it's changed over that time, essentially through pretty much 2020 through until when we did cut off the analysis at the end of November. And you can see again, I've highlighted Basildon. So in a sense, it's when we looked at the data at the end of November, the claimant count had increased by about 3.6 percentage points up to around 6.7, 6.8. It was higher than that in May. It actually went up to 7.2, but there's been a slow, a very gradual decline over that period that we were looking at. And again, you can see, you're in the middle of the pack. You were badly affected. Everywhere was negatively affected out of all the places that we look at. But in comparison to some of our other places, not as much. Slough, Crawley, Luton, you can imagine why those. They are dependent on the airport industry in particular. Those three places have been significantly affected as the airport industry has essentially gone into hibernation. So, it was affected, but maybe not as much as other places. That's an obvious thing to say. And in a national context, you'll hear this a lot. I'm sure you do. This is the map on the left. Very clearly, you can see the sort of the clustering of the greens in the bottom in the greater southeast area, and the purples as we move up into the northern areas. There was a clearer geography to claimant count data before the pandemic. Very much a northern problem. Actually, the COVID crisis has affected all places and has made the blurring, has made the north-south divide less clear for the reasons that I've said. Some of the places that have been particularly hit through COVID have actually been in the southeast, Crawley, obviously, Luton, London itself, and Slough. I've seen quite significant increases in their claimant count. So there's a blurring of the geography in relation to the north-south divide. And as you know, the north-south divide is a fairly constant issue that is debated and discussed in various places, particularly in national government and national government departments. But as I said, everywhere has been affected. So now you can see it's a similar chart to the one that I showed you a couple of slides ago. You can see Basildon again highlighted. What this now is showing you is the pandemic effect. So you were pretty much on the dotted line, the 3% before. Now you're up, as I said, when we finished looking at the data, you were up around the 6.8. So there's been a significant increase, and relatively your position amongst the 63 has got relatively worse because you were 35th. Now you're 26. So you're sliding towards the left hand side. So again, you can look and see places like Birmingham, Hull, Blackpool and Bradford. They were at the left hand side on the previous chart. They are still there, but as I said, you've got places like Luton, Slough and Crawley have also slid considerably to the left because of the effect of the airport industry on all of that. So I think that's kind of interesting just to kind of reflect on. My last point is, again, so this time now we're looking at the potential, the possibility along the x-axis, the horizontal axis, on the ability of people to work from home. And then you've got on the y-axis, the vertical axis, the take-up of furlough. And this was based on industrial structure and occupational structure in different places, the ability to be able to work from home, because as we know, many jobs, and you cannot do them from home. And in fact, throughout the pandemic, the majority of workers have continued to go into their place of work. So what this shows you, again highlighted, Basildon, the work that we did, the estimates suggested that just over about a quarter of the workforce could be doing or could be working from home. And then that obviously had an effect on furlough, because if you're working from home, you're probably less likely to be on furlough. The current rate there of those that have been on furlough for at least 3 weeks is around 8%. Just to give you the high point, which was back in August, that number was up at around 18%. So nearly 1 in 5 workers were had been on furlough. And we've got the data more recently. So this is from the end of October. But actually, when you look at the data in January of 21, because of the lockdown that was reintroduced, that furlough rate has gone back up to 15%. So not as high as it was in August, but higher than it currently is on this particular chart. So again, gives you some sense of the heavy lifting, I think, that furlough has done, continues to do, which then raises obviously concerns and questions about what happens when the furlough scheme ends. My final chart, again, a messy chart, but hopefully useful. We've also been monitoring the performance of town and city centres pretty much through the lockdown. What you can see of the squiggly line, that is essentially footfall into the town centre pretty much from the beginning of March last year all the way through until February of this year. And you can see roughly that if there was normal footfall through that first part of March before lockdowns were kicked in, then you can see the staggered nature of footfall recovery as lockdowns eased through the summer period in particular, and then obviously were reintroduced towards the end of 2020 and into 21, and as cases results, you can see the variation that has happened. And actually in the summer period, footfall more than recovered what it was back in March. It was up above the March numbers, and where we are today is roughly about half of what it was back in March 2020. The blue blocks is spend. So we've also been analysing spending data on cards. So we can't capture how much is spent on cash, but we can look at the amount of money that is spent via cards. And again, you can see it follows to a degree the footfall. There are some anomalies, but essentially you can see again how spend in the town centre with cards has fluctuated through the period, and again how it relates to the pandemic and the lockdowns that have accrued. So that's hopefully a kind of a perspective on what's been happening with COVID and lockdown. I'm going to skip that for the sake of time. So in a sense, what needs to change, and this again, talking to colleagues in the economic development department, we've had previous interactions through their involvement in the joint programme that we did with the National Infrastructure Commission, is trying to think almost in two timelines. One is the sort of short-term recovery. How do we mitigate and minimise the effects of COVID, on the assumption that, you know, as the economy opens up, restrictions ease, there will be a degree of bounce back, but nevertheless we will need to deal with some of the short-term effects of the pandemic, and that's partly about maintaining furlough for as long as we can, and obviously the government has agreed to do that. We were in favour of keeping the £20 increase to universal credit, which was introduced early on in the pandemic. Government's committed to another 6 months, but we shall see whether it goes beyond that. And in fact, there is some interest in thinking about whether a variation on the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, which was introduced in the summer of 2010, will need to be reintroduced if our town centres don't recover in the way that we hope that they do. So there's a kind of short-term set of interventions to help people and places recover, but there are also a longer-term set of challenges that almost pre-exist the pandemic, and actually the pandemic has had an effect on them, but doesn't change the underlying nature of them. And in some respects, your colleagues and you are pursuing these in various ways already, which is actually about improving the skills of the residents of places, particularly making sure that those that don't have skills to make them look competitive in the labour market can get access to the courses and the support to do that. Making our town centres more attractive, not just, you know, from a retail base, but actually from a commercial base more generally. That's an important part of the town centre redevelopment, I think, that is underway in Basildon. We've heard already in a slightly different context about the transport, not just the transport from one place to the other, from Basildon to some other town or to some other city, whether it's London or elsewhere, but actually how people can get around the town more generally. And I think there are questions and issues around that. And again, the government was interested in and was warm towards greater devolution, providing more resources and funding to local government in order for it to be on a more stable financial footing as we move forward. I think there are some questions and issues about whether their appetite is as great as it was maybe six or so months ago. So a kind of short-term set of interventions and a longer-term set of interventions. I will come to finish there, other than to say, if you're really interested, you can get loads more data and insight on a whole range of different indicators, which we collect and analyze and make available across several different domains, whether it's population, business, employment, and such. You can see them on the top of the slide. This is the star chart really for Basildon in terms of the different performance on some of those indicators. Just a way to read it: if you are further out on the spoke, you're performing more strongly. If you're very close into the centre, you're performing less strongly. That gives you the star list. From there, you can get it on our website. And what you can also do is compare Basildon to other places. I've just picked other places in the East region to look at that. But you can look at a whole range of different places and select the ones that you want to look at. You can get a cursory look, but also you can delve into the detail in more general. And with that, I will hand back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Andrew. Appreciate that. Again, very nice, concise presentation. And I would urge other members, if they haven't already seen the more detailed information you've got, to have a look. I mean, it is genuinely interesting, although it has been said I am a bit nerdy, and even before the pandemic, I probably needed to get out more. So but I think that there are bits in it that are really interesting, and in some respects surprising as well. So I'll just throw a couple of questions to Andrew, questions quickly, and to allow other people to come in. I understand, Andrew, if you can't, you haven't got a definitive answer to this, but given the furlough scheme's been, and I admit I've been pleasantly surprised that the furlough scheme's lasted as long as it has, because I didn't think, it probably would. So I'm actually pleased at that. I think that's been good news for a lot of people. But the furlough, I think, is due to end in June as the restrictions ease, which I get. But given the work your guys have done, do they have any idea what impact that is likely to have on Basildon post June, in the few months after June? Because obviously we've been fearing a sort of cliff edge situation for some time, and the end of furlough does seem inevitably some employers will go, right, that's it. Hopefully not too many. So I just wondered if what if any insight you've got on that, and also in terms of the universal credit £20 thing. Yeah, and again, I'm glad it's been extended, but I'm fearful of the impact on Basildon's families, some of the most disadvantaged families, when that's taken away, because that will be a real step change. And the last thing I would say is, and you went through it really quickly, but that's good. The last but one slide, that one of the things I would urge people to look at was the bit about skills, because we know in Basildon we've got a huge issue there. We are trying to address it, but obviously it's a long-term project, but we are aware it's a problem, and we have got to work harder on that. And we've also got to make sure that as society changes and industrial practice changes, technology changes, that we've got our local population with the best possible skill set. And back to you, Andrew. Sorry for going on a bit there.
No, thank you very much, Jed. Good questions. We haven't done any modelling on the exact impact of the furlough end. In part, it will depend upon, obviously, the degree to which there is the recovery. I mean, I think that is the unknown. I think we can be fairly confident, though, and indeed, if you look at the modelling that have been done, for example, by the OBR, they do anticipate a reasonable rise in the unemployment rate or claimant rates, just because of, as you said, firms at that point taking the decision. So, if you think about through the pandemic, the claimant count rate in Basildon roughly doubled over the period, from 3.1 to upwards towards 7, if not more. So it's more than doubled. My worry would be, in a sense, that you would see, we could end up seeing another 2 or 3 percentage points on top of that. All things, I use that, lots of caveats. People are watching on YouTube screaming at the TV, so I think there's a caveat, but I would expect it to increase, right? There's no reason to suggest that it won't increase. How much? Questionable. I think the UC extension, you say, I think it's important in a sense, for 2 reasons. One, it's important to remember, and this is not a political point, that our universal credit system and our welfare system is on the tight end of, when you compare us to other countries as well, even with the universal credit, going from work to no work, that's one of the biggest jumps in the OECD that we have in this country. So I think it was a temporary intervention. I would offer another thought on that, though, very briefly, would be one of the reasons we are in favour of the UC extension being made permanent is actually it provides pennies or pounds in people's pocket, which then they spend. And they do go and spend it on their high street or in their town centre or, in their neighbourhood. So in a sense, part of the challenge for some of these issues are they're all interconnected. More money in people's pockets mean they spend a bit more, which actually benefits our high street and the firms and businesses that are on there as well. And very briefly, you're right, skills is a kind of issue, that very well. Very crudely, you want to increase the number of people with high skills that are in your patch, and you want to get down the numbers that are in no skills. About 13% of your adult working population don't have any formal qualifications. When you look at the numbers, that's quite high. That puts you in the high 50s out of the 63 that we look at, and that is definitely an issue that that we need to address. That's not just a pandemic issue. That's a long-term issue, as you rightly said.
Thanks very much. I'm not seeing anyone indicate. I'm not sure because I can't see everyone. Alan, Councillor Davis, did you indicate or not? I'm not sure.
Councillor Buckley did, I think.
Yeah, Councillor Buckley's raised his hand.
Apologies, you're like twins separated at birth, obviously. Councillor Buckley.
Well, I'm sure I have much in common with Councillor Davis, but it's certainly not politics. Serious couple of points. I think looking at those slides and projections, I think most of them are what we would have expected to have seen. I think it was actually a very predictable outcome, but useful nevertheless to focus attention. I'd just like to pose a question to Andrew, really about recovery in its widest sense. And it's my view that everything that we're struggling with at the moment will come back, maybe not to the normal that we knew, but to a new normal with a full economic recovery. And I was particularly interested in the slide that mentioned about spend, and Andrew mentioned that we're monitoring card spending. I assume that's debit and credit card combined. And it just made me think of the way I've acted over the last 12 months, and not always from choice, but I have bought a lot more off the internet, whether it's groceries from a supermarket or goods from a certain large company. And I just wonder how habit forming that is, because many of us have ended up paying a subscription and avoiding delivery charges and things like that. And I think the supermarkets are beginning that trend as well. So where I really come from on that is how much of that is habit forming? In other words, what will come back to being spent in the borough of Basildon as opposed to being spent with some company that claims to be domiciled abroad? You know which one I mean.
Yes, no, it's a very good point, and actually it touches on the broader point, which is, in a sense, the pandemic has provided a shock to the system, but in some respects, it has accelerated trends that were there already. And as you've said, what we've seen is a steady increase on as a share of overall spend of online spend relative to offline spend. We have actually done the analysis on what that means in different places. I can't recall that right now, but I can send that to your colleagues so they can share as well. And so there has been an increase, you can see on online as a share of overall spend. My sense is that some of that will drop away because more opportunities to spend in the real world rather than online become available. But the overall trend is a continuing one of online becoming a bigger part of how we spend our time and indeed how we spend our money, which then raises interesting challenges and questions for bricks and mortar localities and outfits and what we do about that as well. But I think we should assume that trend continues upwards, even if we see a little drop off as everything opens up.
Presumably the trend for home working, which was another subject you mentioned, leaves more money in people's pockets. The train fare to London is horrendous from here, in my view, and even worse further out. So
yes, I think
people will spend that money on
think again,
home improvements, cars, whatever else.
Yes, I think again you're right, and I think again I would try to think of it as the pandemic has kind of pushed working from home to the very extreme. Pretty much everybody that can is. As the economy opens up and restrictions ease, that extreme number will come down because, in a sense, people will choose to do differently, even if they're in 2 or 3 days a week rather than no days a week. I'm not saying they go back to 5. So that extreme number drops away for certain. It won't go back to what it was, so it'll kind of settle, I think, somewheres in between. And to give you some sort of sense of if I'm not saying it is, but just magnitude, if the top end was a roughly about a quarter of the population could work from home, when the data we've got, which obviously is a few years ago now from the census, it told us that about 8% of Basildon residents work from home at that point. So if you think it's 8 to 25 crudely, I think the number you're going to end up with afterwards is going to be somewhere in between there. Is it closer to 26? Don't know. Is it closer to 8? I don't know. But it'll be higher than 8 and lower than 26 if those two numbers are helpful in that sense.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think the truth is we don't quite know, do we, what the horrible expression of the new normal is going to look like.
No.
And clearly, as Andrew presentation outlined, the thing with Basildon is a lot of our workforce can't work from home anyway. So, and as Alan from Greater Anglia said, that it's interesting that the message from Canary Wharf, from the city, has changed in that they want their people back now as much as possible. Now, it may not be that they're back 5 days a week, but clearly there's a move to get them back more often. So I think we've got to feel our way forward, see where it goes. But I think, and I take Councillor Buckley's point about some people are benefiting from the fact they're not having to pay outrageous commuting charges, but those people were probably living a little bit above their level anyway. And this idea that there's suddenly going to be a splurge of spending, I think, listen, I hope it's right. I think probably in Basildon, it's more a case of people paying off the credit card debts and other loans, etc. So much as I would welcome this mad roaring 20s type spending craze going on, I'm not sure that's going to happen. I don't know if Andrew has any thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. What we know is, if you look at the savings, and this is an obvious statement again, but when you look at who's doing the saving through the COVID, through the pandemic, it's it's pretty much people in the top half of the income distribution who've been doing the saving. And actually, when you look at the amount of money spent on essential items for those in the lower half of the income distribution, that's actually gone up. They've ended up spending more money on essentials, in part because their incomes have come down, but also the prices are so they're not really saving on the consumption side, because they're spending their money on the things that they have to spend their money on, the basics and the essentials. So most of the saving is being done in the top half or the top third of the income distribution.
Thanks for that, Andrew. I'm not seeing anyone else. So if anyone else, no.
Councillor Davis has raised his hand.
Oh,
Chairman.
see, I knew he had. I preempted that. Yeah, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just interested about the voucher scheme to help high streets. I know it was being looked at by the Chancellor, but obviously, my opinion is that obviously the people don't want to be stuck indoors all the time. They all want to go out and do shopping on the high street. I mean, it's easy to press a button and shop from a certain company, isn't it? But people are social people. They want to get out. They want to get into the high street. They want to have a coffee. They want to do shopping. I'm interested to hear more about this voucher scheme and and how that might have an impact as a future trend.
Yeah, so I think that it's a recognition that and again, taking the chair's point, we will have to wait and see. And in a sense, we may not need the voucher scheme if the recovery and people leave their homes and they go back to a degree of normality and spend what they spend and such. But I think there's a recognition that once it begins to settle down through the period and we actually begin to see that bounce back, it might be that we need to encourage a further lot of spending by people in order to stimulate businesses and to provide money into businesses in order for them to open up and to expand. So I think the idea is that you would do that through the high street, like a high street voucher, where it literally has to be spent you can't be saved in the sense, you're not it's not a saving scheme, it's a spend scheme, and that you would be targeting probably some of the industries that have been particularly badly hit, hospitality, leisure, culture, as a way to to further speed up or further increase the bounce back that we hopefully will see anyway. So you can do that in different ways. Obviously, the eat out scheme was a Monday to Wednesday, 50%, etc. You can do that. There are different vouchers options out there, but the basic principle is that we, to try and stimulate more spend and therefore to strengthen the bounce back in different places.
Thank you. Just double checking. Anyone else? No? Okay. Andrew, thanks ever so much. Really interesting presentation. And again, we may have you coming back at some stage in the future. We'll try not to be calling on you too often. But no, thank you. It's really interesting.
I'm more than happy to do that, and thank you very much for having me.
I would urge anyone who hasn't seen the full report to have a look at it, because there is some really interesting stuff in there. So thank you very much again, Andrew. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.
So moving on to item 7, internationalisation. God, I can't say that, of Basildon businesses. So I think this is Tomasz and Jim.
Yes,
not
Chair.
sure who's going first. So Tomasz, it looks like.
Yes, I'll take the reins on that, Chair. I'll just run through a quick presentation of a number of key fact slides for members, as these are updates.
Take your time, Tomasz, no rush. All right.
Yeah, and let me just make sure that technology works. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, well done, Tomasz.
There you go. Well, thou shalt not be defeated is the term, isn't it? Anyway, just as a quick update for members, we've had quite a bit of feedback from BBG, that's the business group in Basildon, about what we could do to try and sort of help them. And as members will probably be aware, there was various discussions in the past in terms of how could we help them get match fit for Brexit. And this is where this information and basis of analysis stems from. So the whole idea here is how could we support our local businesses? And one of the key things there was we engaged with Essex Chamber of Commerce, and we identified that by giving businesses enhanced information of a consistent basis, they could try and improve their position in the marketplace and get themselves ready in terms of those internationalization opportunities. So a whole load of changes that are been coming over the horizon in terms of customs regulations, constantly evolving. And so Chamber of Commerce suggested in tandem with BBG that one of the things we could look at is employing those resources and help them on the following basis. So we would look at sort of including a range of national, regional and local resources to help them. We would look to include those details on a Basildon for Business e-newsletter, which goes on a regular monthly basis. We'd also provide them with click-throughs, which would be monitored to assess the information that would be useful for them and their individual circumstances and markets that they are trying to engage with. And we would make sure that we prioritize the information that was relevant to them in those contents. The other thing, just to make members aware, following the US trip last year with the leader and chief exec and ED support, we subsequently secured a signed memorandum of understanding with Richland County, which were one of the key groups that we went to visit. And the whole point of this is about developing and increasing those trading relationships between the areas, particular focus on technology and advanced manufacturing sector. We're still progressing with liaison with Jacksonville, and we're hoping that we will be able to secure a similar MOU with them as well. And I'll leave that for the moment, Chair, because the next item relates to town twinning, but I'll take any questions in the meantime.
Linking it, that was quick, Tomasz.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, wow. Obviously not on overtime tonight, are you?
I never am.
I know. Yeah, no, just a quick point from me. Yeah, in terms of the last slide, first off, I wasn't on the trip to Richland County, just to make that clear. But I do think, on a serious note, in terms of technology and advanced manufacturing, that's what Basildon's all about, and that's what Basildon needs to be all about if we're going to secure our future. So anything and everything we can do there needs to be explored. So you know, I would urge councillors to bear that in mind. We are reaching out to parts of the world and businesses in other parts of the world where we have clear links, potential links, and potential benefits for our residents and our workforce. So well done with that, Tomasz and Jim, and keep up the good work. I can see Terry Sargent's got a hand up. Apologies, Councillor Sargent has a hand up. Councillor Sargent, do you want to unmute yourself?
Thank you, Chairman. It's taking quite some time for the mute button to be taken off. Thank you, Thomas. I've just got a couple of questions on the memorandum of understanding that you have signed with, was it
Richland County.
Yeah, Richland. No, I couldn't read my writing. With Richland, how is that going to, you know, what benefits are that going to bring to county? And obviously you're hoping to sign something similar with Jacksonville. So, you know, what benefits will that bring in, financially or otherwise? Thank you.
Sure. If I may, Chair, I think there are a number of benefits there, Councillor Sargent. The first one being learning from their experiences and best practice. Also getting insights and connections with companies who are looking to explore markets with the UK. Obviously, the US has always been one of our significant trading partners, particularly in the past. And here are opportunities that we could, I would say, intellectually learn from, business practice learn from, and hopefully make those connections with businesses that operate in Basildon and in South Essex as well, with those trading partners. Jim, I don't know if you would like to add any further comments on that, but those are the sort of main considerations that I know we are trying to forge links with, Councillor Sargent. We're trying to develop those partnerships and create the opportunities that might come downstream with companies that operate in those Chamber of Commerce areas.
Nothing to add, Tomasz. I think that's right. It's all about enhancing trading relationships between companies in the two areas.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Tomasz. Yeah, no, I think, well, obviously, yeah, Councillor Sargent, I see. I'll come back to you in a second, and then Councillor Buckley. Yeah, I think, you know, we're in a new world, both post-pandemic, post-Brexit, and also the technological changes that are unfolding at a degree at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and we have to do everything we can to make sure we're at the front of that development and not at the back. My only regret with the relationship with Jacksonville is, you know, and I've not been, but I'm sure it's a great place, and there definitely is a lot of business benefits. But sadly, Johnny Cash wrote a song about Jackson. I don't think he ever wrote one about Jacksonville, which is a shame. But there you go. Councillor Sargent.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask what we were hoping to achieve from Jacksonville, should we ever get a memorandum of understanding. Thank you.
no,
Or
I
or did you cover the both of them, Tom?
Yes.
You did. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Thank you very
No,
much.
no problem at all, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sargent. Councillor Buckley, I think you were next.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Yeah, I think all of us recognise the value of international trade, and obviously the United States is, if not the biggest market in the world, it is certainly one of the 2 or 3 biggest markets in the world. So it is important we have relations with them, and yeah, I'm delighted at the progress that's been made by the Conservative government in developing those relations. What I would like to ask specifically here, this was the first mention I've heard of an MOU having been signed with Richland County. In fact, I've not heard of Richland County until tonight. I was aware of Jacksonville, as probably most people are. So what I would like is a copy of the MOU, please.
Tom Ash, I think you're welcome to come in a second. I thought that had been put out via the comms department, if not yourself, but if I'm wrong, please correct me.
Well, we've Chair and Councillor Buckley, we have received several requests through the public means for details on the US trip, etc. But yes, happy to provide.
This was not specifically about the trip by the leader.
No,
other issues, but this is just about the MOU.
Yeah, no, that's fine, and I'll be happy to be able to provide details.
If Liz is on the call, and I'm sure she is, unless I imagined it, I am sure I saw a press release on the MOU. But if I did imagine it, then I apologise. Liz, can you confirm?
Councillor Moran, unfortunately, I think this may have been before or during my sort of first time at the council. So what I'll do, if it's okay with you, Chair, is go back and have a look through. And
that's fine.
Is that okay?
If I'm mistaken, I'm mistaken.
Just to be
I'm
clear,
not like
Chairman.
Pope in one respect, in that I am fallible.
Yeah, just to be clear, Chairman, it wasn't the press release I was asking for, though I can't recall that. It's a copy of the MOU that I'm asking for.
Okay, well, we'll go away and we'll find out.
No problem.
And it will be circulated. Tomasz, will it not?
Yep.
Okay, fine. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. No, that's doesn't strike me as a problem. And if it hasn't already been, then fine. You know, there is nothing to hide. Anyone else indicating? Can't see anyone. No. In which case, Tomasz, I think it's back to you for town twinning update.
Yes, Chair. I will try and do it even quicker now. Can everybody see that?
Not at the moment, Tomasz.
Not
Okay.
yet, I'm afraid.
Okay, I'll try again.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Right. Okay, there's only one slide on this. Most of the details are there in front of your screen, but what I would effectively advise is we have had a meeting with the Twinning Association, which took place in early February. The key focus on this is just as per the previous slides regarding internationalization and global opportunities. We were trying to explore with the chair whether or not there were similar opportunities that we could develop here with the Twinning Association. Particularly, members will be aware that through that we have connections via Basildon with Heiligen House and Ville de Meur. Forgive my pronunciation, particularly on the French, as I never really studied it, but if it was German or Polish, I'd have a fair chance. But the good thing there was the association did indicate that they would be happy to explore those economic development opportunities further. So it was agreed we would have a look at that hopefully in the near future. But the key here is there was a decision last night at the Housing Communities Committee where it was agreed that the current budget of £6,000 per annum would be transferred to this committee to support that town twinning. So we have an opportunity to develop those economic development links further, and we'll explore those at the earliest opportunity. That's the summary on that one, Chair.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, all I would like to add is the meeting we had with the Twinning Association was extremely positive, and yeah, we're looking forward to working more closely with them in the future. Obviously, nothing stays the same. Things move on, but you know, we think. I mean, one of the interesting things that came out of that meeting was that there clearly is links already between the Twinning Association members of the Twinning Association and businesses in our twin partners. That probably hasn't been developed as well as it could have been in the past, but so we're looking to ways to improve that. Councillor Sargent has a hand up. Yes, Councillor Sargent.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I understand this did go to the community committees last night, and maybe you can give us, this committee, some understanding of why it's because I used to be heavily involved in the Twinning Association, why it's moved from the community committee to the economic development committee. Yes, I understand the links. We did try those links some time ago, and they should never be dropped. But Twinning is very much, in my eyes, a community function. And we've had those strong links with Heineken House and the Mo one in France for many, many years, and we would hope to keep that. So that's one question. I'd like to know why the budget has been cut from 12,000 to 6,000, and or is it just that that's for the economic development part, and that 6,000 will be retained for the community aspect? And if it isn't, can we make that budget back up to £12,000, because that would be well deserved. So anyhow, I'll leave those two questions for the moment.
No, thank you, Councillor Sargent. No, fair points, reasonable points. It's not our intention to in any way devalue the work of the Twinning association. We want to continue that. We want to develop it. But we also do want to get a bit of economic bang for our buck from it. That's all. So we're not you know, seeking to get rid of it or change it or anything else. And as I say, we had a very positive meeting where we explained that, because I think there was a little bit of misinformation, disinformation, or whatever leaking out about that, and that's not the intention. I respect and recognise the good work that Twinning does, particularly for some of our disadvantaged youngsters who would not have the opportunity to go abroad otherwise. So, you know, I'm wholeheartedly behind that. In terms of the cut, just to be clear, the budget was raised to 12,000 for 2 years, and previously it was 6, so it's gone back to its normal budget. And also, what, you know, budgets are always under review, but what I would say is, in terms of this year, it's unlikely that much of that budget is going to be needed, because let's face it, people are not, sadly, not likely to be going very far anytime soon. But I do appreciate the strong links with two towns, and we want them to continue, but develop and possibly look at developing other links as well. But that's for the future. I think Councillor Sargent wanted to come back in, and then Councillor Buckley, just to be clear.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm glad you appreciate, the work that and recognise the work that is undertaken by this group, because it most certainly is, and they're links that we would not want to break with them. I don't really get the point that the budget was 12,000 and it's gone back to. I don't think that was the expectation of that group. And where the council has raised other budgets in community organisations that provide services to Basildon, why would it be expected that just because there's not a lot of traffic going on because of COVID, that applies in most other business, in fact, in all other business? That's why we are in this predicament. And I think maybe that additional funding would be of great help to them. And as you have said, just responded to me and said that because you want to raise the economic benefits that they could hope to bring, then surely that in itself is going to need that additional funding. So I'm going to put a proposal forward, or a motion, that we, this committee, regardless as to whether we have the budget or not, we're certainly going to have the 6,000 in any case, that we put that budget back to 12,000. And so anyhow, that's on the table, Chairman, and I'll leave it with you.
Well, like I say, the 12,000 was for 2 years. That was specific. So it wasn't an ongoing commitment to 12,000. So I'm sorry if you thought it was, but it wasn't. And it was, historically, it's always been 6,000. But I mean, like I say, this year, I don't really see why that budget is an issue, because let's face it, they are not going to be using much of that budget.
You have raised other budgets, Chairman, and they're not going to many places.
Councillor Sargent,
I put a motion on the table. So
I've lifted the mute function, but I will put it back on because I'm talking at the moment and I'm chairing the committee. I know you don't like that fact, but I am at the moment. Tomasz, is there anything else you'd like to say on this issue? Because I think you indicated.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And just to help Councillor Sargent, the Chair is correct in terms of it was fixed for 2 years, and I'm not getting in the way of the motion. I'm just trying to confirm the fact. The other point I would just add, Councillor Sargent, is the focus to try and bring it into this committee was just to try and help with those economic development opportunities. And also just to try and help as well that literally just before COVID developed to the intensity it did about this time last year, I did try to make connections with Ville de Meer, and I did have a contact, and sad to say that my sort of linguistic skills were a little bit below the mark, but I did try to engage with them to explore any sort of economic opportunities that might exist. And we were trying to look at best practice, and we were trying to look at ideas that both towns could sort of benefit from that point before this became a major agenda item. And what came across in our recent discussions with the Twinning Association is that there are certainly those opportunities to develop further. And just on the point of budget, the chair of that association did indicate that they did have a surplus amount, and coming back to the point of expenditure, they were struggling to expend that amount at this point in time, but they would be looking to plan that over the next 5 years. So I think there was a program that they were looking at, and I think they were looking at exploring those economic development opportunities further with Basildon as well.
Thanks, Tomasz. I think on that, yeah, I completely agree. And I think another reason for moving it to this committee is with our council officers we have at this committee, we have some expertise, and it may be possible, and I'm sure the Conservative members would welcome this, that we can get funding from outside of the council and not take it off council taxpayers as an additional sum of money, hopefully. Obviously, that's something we've got to look at and explore. But probably we have, again, historically, probably haven't looked at that as much as we should have. But we are going to now. Councillor Buckley, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just for the sake of formality, I will second Councillor Sargent's motion to increase the budget to £12,000, and I would suggest that small sum could be taken from contingencies. So we have that there. In terms of twinning itself,
Councillor Buckley, you like taking money from contingencies, don't you?
Well, Chairman, if I had full control of the budget, we would have had it properly planned, and we would not have reduced the budget for the Twinning Association, which is a different matter. But having said that, so I do recognise the value of twinning, and probably like yourself, I have visited Heilighan House, and I've not actually visited Mow. If Thomas wants a contact in Mow, I know somebody that knows some people very well out there, which obviously I won't share here. But I do think there is a very valuable communication. It is, at the moment, it's been largely focused on sport and young people, as I'm sure you're aware. But it's always been the case that we wanted to see business development as a consequence of it. And I think cutting the budget actually sends totally the wrong message. We should be.
Councillor Buckley, we're not cutting the budget. We have explained that several times. We're not cutting. It was 2 years.
Chairman, it may have been a budget for 2 years, and I accept that you may have had it in your budgets only for 2 years. I accept that that may be the case, but what we're saying is we should put that £6,000 back in, and then we should be prepared to keep it in. That then means that the Twinning Association can plan whether it's on social activities, whether it's on business activities. And I do agree with you. Yes, we should be getting money from external sources in addition, not instead of. So I think it is such a small sum of money in the context of council expenditure. I think it's foolhardy not to add those funds to it. So,
Councillor Buckley, I think your timing is peculiar. A time when the Twinning Association can't actually spend the funds we're giving it to double its income that it can't spend seems a little bit perverse to me. One thing I would like to check, though, because Councillor Sargent has rightly pointed this out before, this committee doesn't have a budget as such. So would this motion be in order, Anne? I'm not sure it would.
I would have to look into that, Councillor. I'd potentially be able to speak to the principal accountant if she's available.
Yeah, if you want to do that. I mean, what I suggest is probably why you do that. Two things. One, I will listen to other people at the moment, but maybe we take a break, come back to it, and if necessary, do the other agenda items. But Councillor Sargent's been very vocal in the past that we don't have a budget. So I don't know where she's magicked up this budget from.
Chairman, may I just come
Yes,
back?
you may.
And yeah, we don't have a budget, but we've now been transferred a budget, so you can't not have a budget and have a budget.
Councillor Buckley, we've been transferred £6,000, not 12,000.
A budget.
But we didn't have a budget at all before.
A fixed amount from another committee. That's what has happened. So I think it's only right and proper that the officer takes advice. So
I'm not disputing that, Chairman.
Because there is a danger what you are proposing is not actually correct. So, we just need to have advice on that. Councillor Sargent, did you want to come back in on that? Because like I say, that's where we are. So if it's on the same point, I think we can probably call a temporary halt, but unless it's a different issue.
Well, I would like to know, Chairman, if the motion is coming across, because there is a budget wherever it's going to, it's come across to us. So then we can ask someone else for, as Malcolm has said, to come out of contingencies. So regardless as to whether we have a budget or we now have a budget of 6,000, and as Councillor Buckley has said, let's take 6,000 from contingencies so that that budget can then be sent to the Twinning Association from April.
Councillor Sargent, I think I've made it clear we're going to take advice, because I'm sure you wouldn't want to be inventing a budget we don't have. I'm sure you would want to follow the correct process, as we all do. So let's find out. And if the motion is in order, we will hear the motion. If the motion is not in order, we won't hear the motion, as you would expect.
Councillor McGarren, Rhiann, the principal accountant, is able to speak to you now. She's raised her hand. She doesn't have a camera, unfortunately.
No, that's fine. We're more than happy to hear from her. Well, I'd like to hear from her.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, my it was having trouble unmuting. My understanding is that as the budget was transferred over as £6,000, it would have to remain at £6,000 unless there was councillors come forward with ways of how to fund it. If it was to be transferred from elsewhere, another report would have to come back stating that in the financial implications. And I don't have the authority to authorise it to come from contingency, so I wouldn't be able to answer that.
Given the advice we've just been given, I hear what Councillor Buckley and Councillor Sargent said. The motion does not appear to be in order. I am sorry. However, as I've said, yeah, I can see hands up. As I've said previously, we will, A, the money is unlikely to be spent this year, and B, we are actively looking at other ways to fund the twinning process. Let me see whose hands up. Councillor Buckley and then Councillor Sargent.
Yeah, just very briefly, Chairman. Obviously, I take the advice of the officer, and I think what we should be saying then, and this would enable us to take a vote on it, is that the question of funding the twinning comes back to the next committee, so that we can actually have a proposal to vote on increasing or not the amount of money involved.
I am content to do that, because clearly there are members who feel that's the right course of action. I'm not sure it is, but that's why we have motions and debates and votes. So I'm content to do that. I just feel it would be wrong to do it now, given the advice we've got, given that we don't have a budget of our own. Councillor Sargent.
Chairman, I'm quite happy with that, and thank you for accepting that. But one thing I will say as well, maybe it's about time. This committee did have a budget. I've been saying that for nearly 2 years. It's a service committee, but it's the only one without a budget, and it's about time it had a budget. Thank you.
Well, again, when we next meet, it'll be in different circumstances. Either this administration will still be the administration, or it won't. So that is something we can revisit come May or June, whenever the next meeting is. Although interestingly, at the moment, we're not quite sure how we're going to have a meeting in May anyway, because the Secretary of State doesn't seem to have decided. But anyway, there you go. But anyway, I think that's a satisfactory outcome. Clearly some members want to debate the budget for twinning, and I'm happy to allow that to happen. But like I say, I think it's one for a future meeting and at the next meeting, and not this one, because of the advice we've been given. And thank you everyone for that. I think now would be a good time to take literally a 5-minute break, if that's okay with everyone. And then we'll come back to have an update on the Kickstart, which is great news, which I'm sure we'll all be delighted about. So if we could come back at 9:20, if that's okay with everyone. Yeah. Thank you. And can you let me know when everyone's back on from a councillor point of view? Thank you.
Just waiting on Councillor Jeffrey, and then I can restart the recording. Councillor.
Okay, thanks, Anne. Brilliant.
It's back on now, Councillor.
Okay, thanks very much, everyone. Yeah, so we're actually, before we move on to item number 9, just a thought, Anne, but just so it's recorded on the meeting, the motion about twinning should, I assume, be added to the work programme, and I assume everyone's happy with that. I'm not hearing any dissent, so I assume everyone's happy with that. Yeah. Okay. Cool. And yeah, so item number 9 is the Kickstart update, which, like I said, is good news. Tomasz, is Jim doing this?
I'll cover it, Chair.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There we go. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, we can.
Great. Okay.
Well, I can.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. Right. So there's only one slide on this, Chair, members. Most of the details you can see on screen. I think the only sort of key point I've drawn is if you look at since we engaged with Essex County on this, and we have the application approved in between January and February, we have received the contract offer from DWP. We've got a total of about 39 places secured, 22 of which are within the council. We have been in sort of close contact with Essex, and we have been brokering those discussions. It's primarily internally focused with ourselves, I would say, since it's gone live, but we have made sure that we have maintained those contacts with Essex, as I know certain members of this committee were keen on us to do. And we do have significant wraparound support regarding that. There's lots of different directorates and services which are involved in the council, as you can see, for example, in human resources and ICT, as well as development. And we've got a lot of managers that are supporting that. So recruitment of the first cohort of Kickstart places are due to start imminently as well. I've just wanted to check if there was any further points that Jim might want to make regarding this, because I know he's been closely involved.
Nothing significant to add other than the ECC scheme went live on the 8th of March, and we're doing some promotional work to help them promote it via the Basildon for Business newsletter, and also some of the wraparound support. We're working closely with them to utilise some of their support program as well.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Chair. We'll take any questions.
Thank you. Just like to thank Jim in particular, because I know how much work he's put into this. Tomasz has just sort of coasted off of the back of it as usual, but you know, that's sort of life. But no, on a serious note, thank you everyone involved. It will make a difference. It will make a big difference, and you know, and again, I'm trying to be fair tonight. The government scheme is a decent scheme, the Kickstart scheme, but I have to say the administration, the bureaucracy around it has not been terribly helpful. So I think our guys deserve a recognition for getting it in place as quickly as they have, because by early February this year, only 2,000 places had actually been started under Kickstart. So well done. It took a while, it wasn't easy, but we got there, and we are working closely with Essex County Council, you know, as we often do. I will throw it open for any questions, observations. Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm pleased to see the two authorities working together collaboratively, which you know, there does seem to have been a history of confrontation between the two. So let's hope that this is a step in the right direction. Certainly, Essex has been quite successful as well. So far, there are 250 opportunities available now, and we understand that there are likely to be a total of 600 in the very near future. And whilst obviously not all of those would be in the borough of Basildon, I think, you know, certainly many of us, when in our younger days, when we sought jobs or training, as the case may be, we had to go into other boroughs. And whilst I would like to see those skills, jobs and opportunities delivered in the borough, I think we should be encouraging people in the borough to say, well, yes, I am willing to go to Chelmsford, to Southend, to Brentwood, to Thurrock, or wherever else, wherever the right opportunity is. And I think that is the key to it. It's matching the right individual to the right opportunity. And historically, I'm of the view that, like when I was at school, the old careers service sort of took a view, well, you know, you will fit in that round hole, even though you're a square peg. And it wasn't all that good. And I'm hoping that this is actually going to be something that more meets the aspirations of young people. So welcome step in the right direction, and look forward to greater collaboration and to seeing more joint PR around it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. As we've always said, we are happy to work with our partners, whoever they are, whatever they are. And that very much includes Essex County Council. At the last meeting, we unveiled a co-leavers policy, which again, you know, you seem to take the view we didn't need to because Essex were already doing it, but actually your colleagues at Essex had worked closely with us, and we were taking what they were doing and developing it and moving it into a different, you know, a better direction, and that they welcome that. So I hope you will. Similarly, with the Kickstarter scheme, it's not a competition. It's not a competition. If we can have 39 places, and Essex can have however many, that's great. Because you know what? The people who are paying the price of the pandemic economically and from a jobs and training point of view are our young people. So I'm delighted if Essex are creating some Kickstart schemes for the young people. If some of our young people from Basildon can go to Chelmsford or Brentwood or wherever, that's great. But what I'm doing here as chair of this committee is creating our own Kickstart scheme. And thanks to Tomasz and Jim, very successfully. So, you know, let's just get on with it, yeah? It's great. It's to be applauded. Let's not, you know, we can make cheap shots all night long, but it'll be a long night and I'd rather not. Councillor Sargent.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Well, we know that this scheme was devised by the Conservative government, and it's been well pushed out by them, and it's been well publicised. And it's been well publicised by Essex County Council, because I've got their press release and it absolutely outlines what Essex are doing. And as Councillor Buckley said, it's great that we are collaborating with Essex. I'd like there to have been greater collaboration, but obviously we are where we are. Now, going back to the publicity, I'm not sure, and I'm sure you will tell me what publicity Basildon has had, because if you've got 39 places, so there's been the government give it lots of publicity, the Essex County Council hears. What are we doing? Because this is undoubtedly a fantastic scheme. Whoever's doing it, it is fantastic, bringing opportunities to our young people. I would have liked to have seen a lot more variety in the places that's given, because the council are providing 22 and then it goes down and we got Morgan. We want those opportunities, but we want them to widen up, because not all young people may want to go into what's being provided at the moment. And I totally agree with Councillor Buckley that yes, the young people should go out of borough if an opportunity is there. And I hope that's where our collaboration is working, so that we can, not only with Essex, but with the other boroughs, so that we can send our children and accept other children into our borough from other boroughs that are, where there's an opportunity here for them and opportunities outside for the others. So what is the publicity? Is there any scope for further variety within the job opportunities that are actually given to those young people?
Thank you, Councillor Sargent. Well, I was nice about the government scheme, and I played nice, and you've now, thrown that grenade in about it being the Conservative scheme and all that. The truth is, Councillor Sargent, Councillor Buckley, it's a reheat of a much better Gordon Brown scheme from 2009-2010. So that's the truth of the matter. But I welcome it. I embrace it. It's good. It's good for our young people, and we want to give them as much opportunity as possible. In terms of the numbers, and I'll defer to Tom Ash in a minute, I'm sure if we can expand it, we will. I'm not quite sure what the mechanism for that is. But one of the reasons it's not more is because Essex County Council carved out a certain amount of things that we would have been working with certain businesses and weren't able to. Now, that's okay. As long as the outcome is good, that's fine. But that's the reason. So don't say, oh, it should be more, when you didn't even want us to have one in the first place. No,
Jim, I didn't mean more. I meant more variety.
Well, I've just explained why. Because Essex County Council had a very clear, all-encompassing view of what they were doing and what therefore we couldn't do. So yeah, would I have liked it to have been broader than that? Would I have liked Basildon to be in charge of it rather than Essex in that respect? Yes, but we're working with them, and the main thing is that young people get an opportunity to get 6 months decent pay, decent opportunity, so they don't have a gaping gap in their CV and their lives are potentially ruined for the sake of it. So that's what this is about. Nothing else. Tom Ash, anything you want to add to that?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, Councillor Sargent, we did identify a wider range originally, both Jim and I, but to ensure that collaborative approach, we made sure that the qualifying private sector that Essex County were looking to pursue were supported. So perhaps moving forward, we'll have some greater opportunities collectively, and we will be able to explore those ideas that you were suggesting. I think it is also a mark of the times. I'm going to be mentioning it in my COVID update report, but whilst the government has promoted this, it's trying to find those opportunities within those companies as well during these COVID times. But I think as we move out of that, hopefully there'll be more opportunities developing along the lines. Jim, is there any further points? Because I know you were in direct contact with Essex in the very detail.
The promotion, Chairman, that question.
Yeah, so I was going to answer that question about the publicity.
Oh, sorry, Jim.
No, not at all, not at all. Not at all, Councillor. I think we focused largely on making sure that we've got a robust delivery model and getting the systems in place to make sure we've got good quality wraparound support. So we haven't really focused on a high level of publicity at the moment, but it's something that we can look at.
Sorry, just on that, can I say, In our desire, Councillor Sargent, to bring this to you at the first possible opportunity, it's only just happened. Basically, it's very recently happened. So the publicity process will now begin in earnest, and I'm sure Liz will be all over it. Liz will know that if she's not all over it, I will have one or two things to say, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. It will be fine. We will get the message out that there will be, loads of people applying. And what I would say though is and I take you, Tom Ash has answered it in terms of what Essex is doing, what we're doing, and would we have liked that carved up slightly differently? Possibly, yes, but it is the way it is. However, having a lot of the Kickstart scheme young people in the council, I think it's a really positive thing, because we've got 20 odd young people in the council who probably would never have thought about working at the council. These could be some of the council officers, senior council officers of 15, 20 years time. So I think it's a great opportunity, and I think we all broadly applaud it. I get certain points are being made, but in terms of the comms, don't worry, we'll sort the comms out. And yeah, that's it. I don't see anyone else indicating, but if they are, please let me know.
I've got my hand up, Chairman.
Oh, sorry, I thought that was what we call a legacy
I
hand.
put it.
Yeah, fine, okay.
What I was going to say, Chairman, is that you have an awful lot of dealings with what is going on. Unfortunately, I had expected a small presentation. I mean, I totally get it, Thomas, that we had that, or Thomas, that we had that, we had that short presentation, but and it has just started. But what I would like to ask is that can this come back to the next committee so that we can have a bit more detail and that we really get a feel of the opportunities that those young people are being given, and maybe some.
Can I just interrupt, Councillor Sargent? Absolutely, we definitely can. I'm sure Tom Ash and maybe Stuart Young might want to come along as well to explain it. We're just not quite at that point yet. We've given you the information we've got. We can only give you the information we've got at this precise moment. But again, it's a great story. We're happy to tell it. And again, Anne, sorry, you've got to add another thing to the work programme, but I'm sure you don't mind.
Well, Kickstart, I think, is on the programme. No, I was just going to add, Chairman, it would be nice to have some comments for the young people, or to have a couple of young representatives here. That might be a bit too soon, but I think that the engagement is what this committee is lacking. All we get is presentations. Most of the time, presentations without any reports. And it's very bland, Chairman. I've got to speak my mind. It's very bland. And this is a fantastic opportunity. It involves young people, our young people, and I think it would be great to hear from themselves how well it's working.
And you opposed it, Councillor Sargent. So let's,
I've never opposed Kickstart, never.
You opposed Basildon being a gateway organisation for Kickstart. Yeah. Yes, you did.
Yes, because I said you should work collaboratively with Essex. I've never opposed Kickstart. Now that we're off, let's hear from the young people themselves. Thank you.
Well, we can only hear from the young people when they're in situ and they've had a couple of months under the belt, because otherwise it would be unreasonable. But again, I don't have an issue with that. Tom Ash, would you like to come in?
My apologies, Councillor Sargent. I've just tried to keep it very, in the chair's words, pithy, to try and just keep it very snappy and high level. We can provide you a lot more detail if you require. And as soon as we get people in place, we'll get some commentary for you as well.
Thank you, Tom Ash. As always, the voice of reason. Calm reason, usually. I think it's back to you, Tom Ash, for item number 10, the COVID impact assessment.
Yes, Chair. I'll I'll try and run through this one as well. A little bit more detail in this one, so hopefully members will be happy with the content of this. I'll just try and share this again. Can everybody see that?
Yes, Thomas.
Yeah, that's good, Thomas.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so there's a lot of information in this, members. So I'm not going to read through every bit, but I've just tried to highlight for you. This is a sort of joint effort between Jim and I. So all credit to Jim as well and the team in pulling this information together for you. But we've tried to categorize this into some broad areas. This is primarily the announcements that have come through from the budget, some of which have been covered, for example, by Andrew Carter, some by members yourselves. So first of all, in the key area of employability, furlough scheme, as you've heard, this has been extended up to the end of September. Obviously, different contributions there from the businesses, as you can see. Further support for the self-employed, various grant initiatives and different periods and amounts that have been proposed. Again, trying to help self-employed so that 600,000 more people can claim their grants to progress. Universal credit uplift, you heard from Andrew Carter about the proposal of, and from the chair, can we extend this beyond the £20 per week, which is only for another 6 months, because it's important to enable the spend in the economy. Working tax credits support will continue. National living age will be rising to £8.91. You heard probably in the recent news, Uber are being recognised to secure that. Kickstart we've just covered. Restart program is for the 1 million long-term unemployed. There's a lifetime skills guarantee for adults, trying to get them up to level 3 qualifications, because again, as you heard from Andrew Carter at Centre of Cities, and we know from our own economic development research that there is a significant number of people in Basildon who don't have those level 3 and 4 qualifications, which we're seeking to secure and progress and promote and help through various initiatives, particularly the economic development strategy and the focus on employment skills to get people into taking advantage of those opportunities in Basildon in particular. There's also apprenticeship incentive payments. These have been doubled to £3,000, and there's a significant amount of new investment going into traineeships of about 126 million. We then move on to business support and protection. There's a whole plethora of cash grants, which you'll see in a few slides shortly, together with new restart grants kicking on from April. Again, you can see how the non-essential retail business will be opening, and the amount of money that will be channeled to them, as well as hospitality and leisure sectors, and goodness knows they, bless them, need it. There's also £700 million to be directed towards supporting arts, culture and sporting institutions, and again, they've been an area that have suffered quite significantly as a result of the closures, etc., and restrictions emanating from COVID. Next area, loans. Bounce back loans, whilst they'll be ending in March, they're going to be replaced by a new recovery loan scheme. This is to enable businesses so they can apply for loans for about £25,000, and I think the government is guaranteeing up to 80% of that. Minimum is 25,000, obviously max 10 million. Also, the government provided 100% business rates holiday, particularly retail hospitality areas. It's a significant tax cut worth £10 billion. And that's going to continue through the end of June, and then thereafter for the remaining 9 months, it'll be discounted. So there'll be a lot of discussion there and support through our revs and bends to sort of enable that as well. There's help for hospitality and tourism, as you can see, with the reduction in VAT. There's also help for the housing sector. The stamp duty was cut. This is the 500,000 threshold, which will be at a nil band. That's going to be taken up to the end of June, and thereafter it'll be tapered down towards 250,000 until the end of September, and then it's 125,000 thereafter from October. Also business tax investment to encourage unlocking business investment and also drive up productivity. There's further deductions that are going to be spread over a couple of years to help companies to invest as well. Green growth, there's a UK Infrastructure Bank looking to support this initiative very much towards the public and private projects. They're kicking off this spring, and initial capitalisation of £12 billion to support 40 billion of investment. So again, it's a phasing arrangement. Productivity issues help to grow both in management for training to help a new executive development program, as well as the digital to help improve the digital skills development. That is certainly a key area within not only with the college, for example, in Basildon, but also in our identified work streams as well, to help new trainees to get into that new environment and move towards those enhanced skills to secure those better job opportunities. But essentially you can see there, even enhanced software will sort of help with towards the training. And there's a big one coming on our doorstep here through Freeports, which we've discussed at the OSC, which is a subgroup of the LEP. We've been discussing this as well in terms of, of the emerging freeports. There's one being proposed for Thames Freeport, which includes the London Gateway, Tilbury and Ford Dagenham. They have significant tax advantages and really are a special sort of economic zone with streamlined planning as well as sort of tax incentives to assist, but it also helps with the job creation investment. And we've carried out our own SWOT analysis on that, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, just to ensure that Basildon isn't disadvantaged on that. And with the chair's engagement and support, we've been exploring that with the Opportunity South Essex OSC. Again, local grant update, again, just some high levels there. Members will already be aware, I'm sure, but the closed business lockdown payments, which were between £4,000 to £9,000, those grants have been made available. They've all been subject to a rateable value of the businesses. There's also been localized restriction grant, or LRG as it's known, as well as additional restriction discretionary grant, ARG, as well as Essex Business Adaptation Grant, which we've all been trying to ensure via revs and bends and economic development that we've been making sure businesses are aware, and revs and bends colleagues have been greatly supporting in the distribution thereof. I'll just quickly run through these screens, but it just to show you the magnitude of the grant distribution and the amount of money that's been made available, that this council, in tandem with other bodies, have been pursuing. I won't read off everyone, but if you could just sort of digest the amount paid to date and the amount of budget remaining under each of the schemes, it'll give you a sort of an appreciation. And these are the open and closed schemes. Some of these are historic members, but again, it's just to give you appreciation across the allocation, how much money is being distributed throughout in total. and on the ERG schemes as well, how much has been allocated, just so you've got a feel for the amounts and the figures that have been allocated. So there's a new sort of ERG window that has now sort of proceeded. It was, when we drafted this, it was obviously earlier, and this will run on till the 12th of April to align with the expected reopening dates. Obviously, that is all dependent on the requirements being met for each of the stages that the government has indicated. There are certain criteria that have to be met before the government will initiate each of those stages of lifting the COVID restrictions. So on the assumption that it does, that'll kick in after or up to until the 12th of April, should I say. There's also reference there about rent arrears support for market and tenants. Again, looking to secure support for and make awards of up to £10,000. And if there are any further announcements or cash grants, we'll be sort of working further on that with our colleagues in Refs and Bens to make sure that they meet the policy requirements. There's been additional grant funding of about £7.2 million, which has been announced by Essex County Council. This was 12th of February. It was to try and assist around 60,000 self-employed people in SME businesses, roughly sort of allocating funding of up to about £5,000 per business. And it just gives you a list there, which I won't repeat, but you can have a look and digest the criteria and the forms of businesses that would benefit from that grant. I'll just leave that up for a few seconds. But it even covers on newly self-employed who set up their businesses after 6th of April 19 and before January 20. And then coming up to the final slide, members, this just gives an update in terms of the town centre, how we've been working with colleagues within the economic development team, not only through the business group, and I think our next meeting, Chair, will be scheduled for the 30th of March if all goes according to plan, as well as working in tandem with Things Made Public, which we're sort of identifying a formal town centre partnership to see how we can sort of develop. I think initially there's 25 stakeholders from both the public, private and third sector that are being identified as possible group that we can develop this with. There's continual liaison with the high street businesses across all of the towns within Basildon, where we're providing close one-to-one support, and this is in tandem with other colleagues and directors and their services. And also we've been looking to develop an officer working group towards a town watch in Basildon to effectively, address perceived safety concerns. And I think this is particularly important as we move forward with the regen strategy, members, in terms of private and public development that will be coming into the town centre, and how we can ensure that people will feel safe about coming into those new opportunities. And then finally, we've put in a claim for about £55,000, which is submitted in January. This is to Ministry of Housing and Central Local Government. And the whole idea of that is to try and sort of recover some of that money. We're hoping that claim will come through in the next couple of weeks. We've also been promoting our Shop Local Safe website, our Shop Local Shop Safe website, should I say, that not only has been procured, but will be sort of running in approximately, I think, 4 to 6 weeks now. And then finally, we're still progressing matters with Essex County in terms of that collaboration that members have been talking about. And this is about Wickford High Street to try and undertake design works so we can close it and increase and improve the market feel within that area. So, Chair, I'll stop there. Happy to take on any questions. If some of them may relate to the grants, I may have to defer to colleagues from the Revs and Bens, but I'll try and respond as best I can, Chair.
Thank you, Thomas. And thank you to the whole revenue and benefits team there, because I know the last year how I'm not saying they don't work hard normally, but incredibly hard they've worked this last year to deliver all of this. It's been very challenging, and I've been mightily impressed with what they've achieved. I can see some hands up already, so I'm going to come to you, don't worry. Just a couple of points of mine, because there's quite a lot in there, so I'm not going to go into most of it. In terms of the Freeport's interesting, and as we've discussed, Tom Ash, but just so the people know, there are potential opportunities for Basildon, but there are potential pitfalls. So, but what I do know is that Tom Ash, Jim, and other team members are working on it, and we are not going to be left out. If there's anything to be gained from the Freeport, we're going to get a slice of it, because I know that Tom Ash and the rest of the guys are determined on that, and they have my full support. In terms of digital skill set, absolutely. We know we've got a real challenge. We know we've got a lot of work to do, but we're doing it. We will get there, and we will get there as quickly as possible. And just one last observation, and it is an observation, so I'm not trying to have a row. The new national living wage, £8.91 an hour. Now, to me, that is not a national living wage. That is a bare minimum wage. And when you bear in mind some of those people on the national living wage are furloughed, they're on 80% of the national living wage, which is less than that at the moment. So, we have some of our residents who are having very tough times, and our number one goal is to work for them and get them through this. I'll leave it at that. I think Councillor Buckley, you were first this time. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, Chairman, but I'll take the spot anyway. I think a whole comprehensive package, which at the end of the day, it is put together by the government, and we are effectively the administrators or deliverers of the government resource. So I think, we should be recognising where the money is coming from. And I did notice on
Councillor Buckley, the money always comes from us.
Well, you're absolutely right. It comes from taxation, which is why council tax should be lower. But having said that, one of the slides which Thomas showed us earlier on showed a shortfall in income. Now, I'm pretty certain in the next boxes along from that slide, it said that there was a substantial sum of money that had been pledged but not yet received. So just like a little bit of clarity around that, because my expectation is what we spend will be recovered, maybe not the day we spend it, but soon thereafter. The other question I just wanted to pose was around...
Councillor Buckley, can I just come in there? I'm sorry to interrupt your train of thought, but that is the expectation, but whether it will be the reality is something different, as you know. And also, what is not clear is the loss of our revenues, the parking revenues, the Towngate Theatre, etc., etc.
Sure.
How much of that we're getting back? Because that's gone. So I've been very reasonable tonight, Councillor Buckley. I've praised.
And I'm being very reasonable as well, Chairman. So it works both ways.
But what I would say is, in terms of our lost revenue, what's happening there? Because we haven't seen that yet.
Sure. Well, certainly my expectation is that certainly as far as the grants that Thomas was talking about, where we have spent the money, that should be covered under the Chancellor's schemes. And
so you will condemn the government if they don't provide.
I won't condemn the government if we fall a bit short, because they have spent so much of our money supporting the.
No, hang on, Councillor Buckley.
Our people, Chairman. It's all If there was a penny short, you would criticise the government, and you were wrong in that.
Whatever we needed. So if they don't give us every penny of what we've spent, they haven't given us everything we've needed. That's fairly straightforward.
Well, that's where I might disagree with you, but that's another matter. But I'd like to.
So we should take the hit.
If you'd stop interrupting, Chairman, and actually let me ask the question of the officer, which you were keen to finish earlier on. I don't know why you were, but you were. And my question related to a practical issue, and Thomas mentioned around the market, in Wickford in particular, which obviously we will all be very pleased to see back in the high street at some point. I just wanted to ask a question about, we originally have some wardens in the town centres trying to direct people around one-way systems, etc. Is it Basildon Council, presumably through environmental health, that's actually advising on access to community facilities? And I'm particularly minded of a school where I've raised an issue at Essex, but given that I've got the director here, he's the right person to ask the question as far as Basildon's concerned. So in terms of controlling, it's basically around parents gathering at school gates. Do we have any influence?
My understanding, and I will defer to the council officers, is that's a policing issue. The police don't seem overly keen on it for fairly obvious reasons. It's interesting, though, that one of the worst offenders is St. John's Private School, which is not too far from where I live. I just make that point.
All I can say, Chairs, it's not an area that I have personal sort of involvement with, but I can certainly come back to Councillor Buckley and provide some comments when I liaise with my colleagues, as it'll probably transcend across a number of directorates. So if I may, Councillor Buckley, I'll come back and answer that point post-meeting.
That's fine. I am aware that we do offer advice to other businesses, retailers, and so if you could come back, that would be helpful.
Yeah, no, like I say, I don't think it's primarily our responsibility, but it's a legitimate question and it's a legitimate concern, because we know certainly months ago that was felt to be a real issue in the spread of the disease, etc., etc. Councillor Sargent.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know what your chap was saying about I've seen your hand. I hadn't made any query. I was just waiting to be called. I didn't know whether you thought I had. But anyhow,
my point, Councillor Sargent, was to let you know that I'd seen your hand was up.
Well, you did. I mean, I was quite happy. I wasn't making.
No, I'm not saying you weren't happy. I'm glad you're happy. I was just making sure you were aware that I'd seen your hand.
You were going to call me. Yeah, thank you. Thomas, I heard some real positivity in your voice. It might not have been thought so by other people, but I really did. Because let's face it, who would have known what we were going to go through, and the level of support, whether or not anyone agrees with me, but the level of support that has been given. Remember, it's not just for Basildon, it's around the whole of the country. And I don't think personally that we have done that bad. I'm not saying that everybody's hunky-dory, because we certainly aren't, but we could have been a heck of a lot more worse off than we are. And I think the government has done a sterling job in what they have done, particularly with the furlough payments and the universal credit increases, and particularly now to the self-employed. I think that was a total, something that did need to be done. And one thing I will say, harping on about, our communities, I am so pleased to see the fact that our community centres and village halls have benefited from these support grants, because without them, many of our buildings would have to close because they have had no business. And I think this is one of the reasons I've been harping on for a year, that they do need help and support. And I'd like to thank all you officers that have worked extremely hard to divvy out all what's been divvied out to the communities, and thank you on their behalf, because it must have been extremely difficult taking in all of these applications from all of these people. And I just think you've done a really good job. And I know I complain a lot, but tonight I'm saying to you, thank you very much for your detailed presentation. And I hope you can send us the slides, Thomas. But thanks to our staff as well, because I think they've worked extremely hard. Thank you.
If I may, Chair, all credit to the Revs and Ben's team and all supporting colleagues there.
Thank you.
No, exactly. And thanks, rare moment of agreement between me and Councillor Sargent. It doesn't happen very often, but it's very welcome when it does. Yeah, we absolutely appreciate the efforts of our staff, particularly revenue and benefits teams. They've been magnificent. They have been magnificent. And it's interesting because I do, I'm on a lot of meetings with Thomas and Jim, the Basildon Business Group and other subdivisions of that. And it's been quite challenging at times, particularly the hospitality section, looking at them and seeing in people's eyes the fact that they know their businesses are so close to going under. And that the whole way of life, their families, everything, it's just horrendous. So but what I would say is that the Basildon Business Group and the various other groups we've engaged with have all been appreciative of the efforts that our council staff have made. It has been recognised. It has been recognised that because some of the businesses work across other districts, etc., and it has been recognised that it's different here. It's been better and it's been really welcome. And when people are staring into the face of the abyss, just give that shred of comfort is really welcome. And all I would say is we will keep going. Don't know how long these businesses are going to need the support, whatever. But as long as they do, we will keep working to provide them with the support they need. And I also agree. I've been quite, by my standards, generous to the government tonight. But you know what? It hasn't done everything, and I'm not saying it can do everything. But just one figure I'd like to give you. The new national living wage is £8.91. If you're on 80% of that, you're on £7.13 an hour. Now, I don't know about the rest of yous. I couldn't live on £7.13 an hour. I'm being honest, with a family. And despite what other support is in place there. So I think that's one of the areas that should have been looked at, that if you're on minimum wage, it should be 100%, not 80%. But that's just my observation. Alan Davis wants to come in.
Hello, you hear me? Yeah, brilliant.
Yep.
I noticed in the presentation, things made public in the Arts Consortium. I missed it because I was writing down something else. Could you just reiterate what's happening there? Because, without the arts, we are nothing. So someone has probably said. So I just wanted to know what's happening with things made public in the Arts Consortium and how the arts and culture are being helped during this period.
Yeah, just trying to find the detail for you, Councillor. Yeah, okay. So, sorry about that, Councillor. I was just trying to make sure I had the right slide detail for you as well. The whole basis behind that is to try and establish a formal town centre partnership. And so we're looking at a not-for-profit type organisation there. So things made public are sort of helping us pull this together and identifying relevant stakeholders. There's 25 that have been sort of proposed. I'll be able to get the detail to you in terms of which ones, but there is a mixture between public, private and third sector. It's basically a conception stage. I think what we were trying to look at is something along the lines of a business innovation type district, but we're trying to sort of grow this phoenix out the ashes of the retail sort of ashes that have been occurring. And we're sort of planning and mapping those possible stakeholders for that model. Then the main next stage of the process is effectively to secure the capital needed, and we're looking at the Basildon. Well, we're looking to sort of create that for the Basildon Arts Consortium to fund development and legal framework for the partnership. So that's the starting point, Councillor Davies, of what we're trying to do. Okay, thank you.
Okay with that, Councillor Davis? Cool. I think I don't see anyone else. All I would say is one thing that's remiss of me, I should have mentioned this, is in terms of the myriad things we're doing to help our residents during this very difficult time is the no eviction policy, which has been extended to September, at least September. We'll review it before September. But I think it's important for two reasons. One, because it gives our residents the knowledge that no matter their economic situation changes, that they've still got a roof over their heads. And also it allows us to put a little bit of pressure on some of the other housing association landlords in the borough to make sure they adopt a similar philosophy. So, like I say, I think it's worth remembering that, making sure we get that message out there so people know. I don't want people worrying about the fact they're going to be kicked out of their council house, because they're not, if it's genuine economic hardship. And yeah, that's it from me on that one. And it's last item on the agenda, you'll be distraught to know, is number 11, our play. Joe and Liz, but I think it's probably mainly Joe, but I don't know. So
yeah,
help me out.
That's right. Yeah, thank you. And hello everyone, good to see you all. I will keep this very brief. I'm sort of aware not only of the time tonight, but also the fact that you'll all be required to put in a similar shift tomorrow night, I have no doubt. So I won't keep you for too long. And it's worth saying that this is really an interim update. I was just very keen to ensure that we came back to you to let you know what's happening with our place before we got to the end of the municipal year. But our intention was always to do a more substantive report back in the summer. We've actually said, the last time we spoke about our place, I was reflecting on this earlier, we actually said we would report back in May. And for the reasons that I'm about to talk about, we're now going to push that back by a month. But I was thinking that would be a bit difficult anyway, because it's always hard to report back to a committee in May during an election year, because typically the committees aren't quite ready by that point. But if I just talk you through what's happened, you'll remember that last summer we had Wayne Hemingway and also Sophie from the Hemingway organisation come to join us to talk to us about our place and their plans for phase 2 and how we could take that forward. Members will remember that phase 1 of our place happened in the preceding year in 2019, when we had one of the biggest engagement events the council's ever had, where we talked to thousands of people about their experiences of the borough. And the intention of our place, all of which follows on from work that was commissioned on the back of the Breakthrough Basildon Commission's finding. The intention of our place has always been to start with this really broad set of conversations, talking at a high level about what people like, don't like, and want to see in their part of the borough or the borough as a whole, and then refine that over time into a much more nuanced message about an authentic sense of place and identity for the borough, which we could then use in a multiple set of ways. one of those elements was to answer some of the original findings from Breakthrough Basildon, which found that there was quite a fragmented sense of community in Basildon, and that people didn't necessarily have the best perspective of the borough. And I mean, we've been through all of that before, so I'm not going to retread all of that ground. But I think what's important to remember is that phase 2 was always supposed to be about having a set of focused conversations with smaller groups of people, but in more depth. And you'll remember that Hemingway, colleagues from Hemingway came along to speak to us in, I think it was June last year, and they outlined an ambitious program for taking phase 2 forward in light of what we understood the pandemic to be at the time. And you can guess from the way that I've phrased and intonated that in itself presents a very heavy caveat, because what has happened since that time is that Hemingway have undertaken for us some really good and valuable engagement activity, but because of the way that the pandemic has developed, it's massively interrupted the progress that they've been able to make during that time. And essentially, we need to put this back by around a month or so to ensure that we can do some more engagement activity. I've said in the report that at the moment, they've got about 60% of the knowledge that they would need so far through the activity that they've been able to carry out. And there are a couple of key features that we need to be really mindful of. If we can cast our mind back to those heady days at the beginning of last summer, when the coronavirus, we were still in lockdown at that point, but the coronavirus pandemic was progressing in a way that I think gave all of us looking back at it, it's almost like a naive sense of optimism about the progress that the pandemic and the virus was likely to take. And I think we sort of assumed we'd be able to do more in the time than we've been able to. But also there's a really positive aspect to the fact that we're delaying it because of the unfortunate way in which the pandemic has progressed, and the fact that we've had a series of national lockdowns that weren't originally anticipated, some really, really significant challenges for all parts of society, both related to the direct and indirect consequences of very high infection rates during the autumn and winter of last year. We actually think that now the story that we will be getting from people is going to be slightly different. And I don't think anyone would argue with that. People's lived experience over the last year has been so radically different to what we anticipated when we were having this conversation about phase 2 in early summer 2020, that actually there's an advantage to us having to take a little bit more time to do this and doing a little bit more engagement activity than we originally anticipated, because it will allow us to harness that perspective of what life is now like for people, having spent a full 12 months living through this process of being locked down and going back to some semblance of normal life, and vice versa. And one of the things that we're very keen to explore is how that's affected people's understanding and the significance of the very immediate local area. And the initial work that Hemingway have done has been very, very good at looking at some of the narratives around the Newtown area, but we're very keen to ensure that the following work that's going to happen between now and the summer of 2021, at which point we will report back again, we're very keen to ensure that that work picks up the perspectives of other parts of the borough and ensures that we really get an understanding of what that experience now looks and feels like, given the challenges that people have been undertaking. So the report sets out in broad terms everything that I've just said. Our recommendation is that we carry on. This isn't expected to cost us any additional money. We're Liz, our head of comms, if you haven't already met her, has been handling that whole relationship with Hemingway really, really well. And we've got that agreement that more work is required. And at a relevant point, we've said in the report June, there will be a report back to the committee to ensure that you understand what the final outputs for phase 2 was. And at that point, be very pleased and happy looking to get Wayne and his team back again as well, to ensure that they can give us their first-hand insights. And that is a very brief summary, but I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Joe. Brief, but to the point. That's good. Councillor Sargent, I can see your hand up. I'll come to you in a second. I think you're right. I think the work that Hemingway Design has done so far, great. But I think when we had the meeting in May, June, whenever it was, it felt like we were coming out as a full-on lockdown and things were getting better and all the rest of it. And then we went into November lockdown and then January lockdown, full on lockdown. So it's made it difficult. So, you know, maybe Hemingway Design slightly underestimated the scale of the challenge, but given none of us knew quite where we were, that's understandable. But the main outcome is we're a month adrift. That's it. We're a month adrift, no extra cost. So, yeah, it's as good as it could be. I mean, it could be much, much worse. Because I think actually, to be fair to Hemingway Design, what they have done is they were confident they could do this in a lockdown sort of remote environment. And they have done a lot of the work in that environment, but not all of it. But I think the reason they haven't been able to do all of it is the danger is we could have a very skewed version of events because we're all living in a world that's different than normal. And so if we're going to have a meaningful outcome to this, we have to move it on so that we're not all of those, you know, those conversations are happening when we're in pandemic. Councillor Sargent.
Thank you, Chairman. What I would like to know is what the Chairman said is the work that they've done so far is great. Well, this report doesn't tell us of any of the work that they've done so far. So that's what I would like to know. What has the work been done so far? Because it's, as the Chairman also said, they're not going to cost us any more money. We've put £60,000 into this. And at the time, their presentation, they were extremely positive and they were confident that they could do it all, regardless of the challenges. And to me, you know, the report tells us nothing. And I just wonder, well, I would like to propose actually that we go for, we don't go for option one, we go for option two and we mend the approach, because I just think that for over a year, we've got nothing. I mean, everybody's aware of my thoughts on that very first consultation. There wasn't nowhere near the number of responses that should have been for what was called the biggest ever consultation. There was less than 2,000, I think, when Ray, the officer, gave us the presentation and the statistics and the outcome of that. It didn't seem like anywhere near that, because I can remember speaking on at council. I mean, I just think that it says they've got 60% of the knowledge and the key features, but we're not told anything. 60% is over half. So I would have really liked to have had some key features here this evening that would have given us an appetite for say, yes, oh, they've done well so far. And I'm not talking about anything final and detailed, but some of the key features that has been an outcome of the consultation since last June. I'm not moaning about the fact that it's taking longer, because obviously it will do under the circumstances. But I just think that if they've done 60% of the work, then we should have had an indication here this evening of that work, because you know, and another thing, Joe, how much is left of the budget? There must be a substantial bit left, because they're saying they don't want any more. Well, there was a budget of 60,000. You know, I would have thought that would have been sufficient, but maybe you'll tell me different. Anyhow, I'll end it there. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, no massive surprises there. Councillor Sargent opposing it, as she has from the start, despite the fact that her party initiated this piece of work, albeit under a slightly different title. Look, the work is progressing well. The pandemic has posed challenges for all of us in all sorts of ways, so it's not surprising it's posed challenges in this area as well. But you know, we are there. What's the point of giving you half of the work? We'll give you the presentation when phase 2 is completed. What's the point of giving you 60% of phase 2? It makes no sense. And in terms of the budget, I think I've answered that, but I'll hand over to Joe in case he wants to say any more. But we are not, we've made it clear we're not over budget, so there's not an issue there. So instead of the report coming back at the end of May, it's coming back at the end of June. And given the electoral cycle and all the issues about meetings, the end of the world, that might not be a bad thing anyway. Joe.
Yeah, just to clarify on the budget issue, technically it all remains because we haven't yet given any money out on the basis of the work that's been completed so far. So what we're saying is it's an extension of the existing work within the same financial envelope that we'd already previously agreed. So it's still within that £60,000 budget.
Can you respond, Joe, to the fact that you haven't given us? I mean, the chairman has said about you weren't going to give us half a report. I've not asked for half a report. I just like some tidbits. Even if you'd given us some real features tonight of something that had come out of a really difficult time, because and to say that it's nearly ready.
Councillor Sargent.
I'm speaking to the officer, Chairman.
And I'm chairing the meeting, Councillor Sargent. I know you never respect that fact, but I am chairing the meeting, and it is, it's pointless coming back with half a report. It doesn't make any sense, because also what we're recognising is because of the pandemic, what people are feeling at 6 months ago might not be the same as they're feeling in a month or two's time or 3 months' time. So we need to factor that in. So again, apart from you wanting to just besmirch it for the sake of it, even though, as I say, the original piece of work was your administration, so it just seems because it's our administration now, you don't want to hear anything about it. We're doing our best in difficult circumstances. We are delivering. We will continue to deliver. And by the end of June, you'll have a proper report in front of you. If we could give you one now, we would, but we can't for the reasons that have been outlined. Joe.
Yeah, all I was going to say to try to address Councillor Sargent's point, I definitely recognise the point you're making about, is there something we could tell you? And the reality is, especially because this is a public forum, we've taken the view that if we present something that's inconclusive before Hemingway have been able to finish the work that they want to do to the standard that they want to do it to, we run the risk of sort of inadvertently setting the template of what we should expect from this and kind of deciding now what the answer of this work is rather than actually letting it run its course. So it's a kind of it was a decision that we've taken on the basis that we don't want to prejudge it by talking about some of the results now, and then that becomes the sort of final story. So I understand the point you're making, but I think it's still the right thing to do, to wait until we've got a final picture of this phase of the work.
Thanks, Joe.
Have you put a proposal on the table, Chairman, on the options?
Yeah, well, we'll vote on the options anyway. So I don't think you've put a different proposal. You've just put option 2 as opposed to option 1.
Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. A couple of things. First of all, I'm just looking through the report. There's discussion of stakeholder events held on Zoom. I know that does seem to be a trend for the council at the moment to try and engage stakeholders on Zoom. It works for some, but it does not work for the entire community. So I don't see that as being something which is acceptable as a route to a conclusion. It can contribute, but it is not definitive in itself. I think Councillor Sargent is right to raise the point that we did, and I was actually going to suggest that in terms of the recommendations, noting the next steps scheduled is okay, it doesn't actually do anything, but I would also suggest that recommendation 2 should be that this committee requires a second presentation by Hemingway Design before agreeing to the use of the remainder of the funding, and then you can have the rest of the paragraph if you like. And I think that's pretty clear. What we're saying is, yeah, we recognise there's been problems because of the pandemic, and we've talked about that under other items tonight. So let's bring Hemingway in. They can tell us what the obstacles are. I'm not asking for the outcome of their report. What's the obstacles? How do they resolve them? How do we get the quality and the outcomes that are being sought by the council? So that's what I would suggest as a second resolution, Chairman, and I'm sure that Councillor Sargent would second that.
I'm sure she would. Yeah.
She just has.
I'm absolutely sure she would. I don't see any need for that personally. Like I say, all that's happened is we're a month adrift, except we're not really a month adrift because the whole world's more than a month adrift on everything. So I don't see what the issue is. Hemingway Design have done a good job in difficult circumstances, and I'm confident that they will continue to do a good job, particularly when the circumstances are a little bit easier. Ironic, Councillor Sargent seemed to be very, very fond of Hemingway Design when he attended our meeting, so not quite sure what the objection is, apart from to the whole notion of our place and the whole notion of the administration. But I can't help Councillor Sargent on that one. She's got to decide what she thinks on that. I'm not seeing anyone else indicating they want to speak. Oh no, I am. I beg your pardon. Councillor Davis.
Thank you. I just want to point out that there are the risk implication table at the back of the report. There is a threat that the council does not deliver a strong brand, and as set out in the narrative, we need to promote civic pride amongst our existing residents, businesses and partners, encourage local people to spend more time in the area, attract new businesses. And the threat matrix says that if we don't, if the best way forward is to allocate this money and resources to this in order to lower that risk. And if we agree to the £60,000 funding tonight, that will lower the risk of this threat, which is a reputational and an economic threat. So, unfortunately, I can't support any recommendation that would deviate from
that. Thanks, Councillor Davis. I think it was Councillor Brockman next and then Councillor Buckley.
Sorry, that's a legacy hand, Chairman.
Beg your pardon?
Sorry, that's a legacy hand, Chairman.
Oh, okay. Right, thank you. Councillor Brockman.
Yeah, following on to what Alan said about civic pride and everything, I'm just reading down here about the respondents were asked how they feel about living in the borough. That's 11% unhappy and 7% ashamed. That's not a great thing. I mean, there's always people that are going to moan. Let's face it. Don't matter. You could put someone in a palace and they'll moan about the carpet. That's fact. But I'd like to see some form of us or people finding out what they don't like and what they think would be the answer. And Malcolm's thing about getting Hemingway's back, I agree it would be nice if we could have some form of further information. I don't think we need them to come back exactly to us, but I would rather they gave us more information first. I don't know how I'm going to vote on this. I really don't at the moment.
Councillor Brockman, if I can just reassure you and I'm sure Joe and Liz can come back in to confirm this is the case. When that piece of work is done, they will come back and present. Remember the last meeting when they told us what they were going to do? I am sure, and I will be reassured by Joe and Liz in a minute that they will come back and do that and talk us through exactly what it means, because that's, consultants have a bad name. I realise that, he said with a straight, try not to smile. But what consultants do is give you the information that you cannot get yourself. They dive deep, they delve into it and give you the information that you need to move on. And that's where we are. That is where we are. And they've made some progress, but because of the pandemic, not quite as much as we would have liked. But we will get there, because we will make sure we get there. Because if Mr. Hemingway and his team don't get there, I will be having stern words with them. And I will,
Ah, but what if you're not back here in May? Then who's going to take you to task? So can I ask Joe?
Yeah, of course you can.
Yeah.
Eunice,
Joe,
yes, Joe. Yeah.
Joe, talk to Auntie Eunice. Do you guarantee they're going to come back and you'll hold them to account if they do?
I mean, to be fair to Hemingway, that was always their intention. They once they've reached the end of the work, they will want their opportunity to talk us through the findings. And to be really clear, that is entirely what phase 2 is all about. It's supposed to be a two-pronged thing. On the one hand, get underneath the detail of some of those really significant findings we had from phase 1, and you're really, spot on, Councillor Brockman, to raise the issue of that many people feeling ashamed, because that was the one thing that really stuck with me from phase 1. Like, how can we have that within our borough? But the other thing that they'll do is they will tell us what an authentic sense of identity for Basildon Borough would be. What's a positive story about Basildon Borough that won't have the people who live here thinking, oh, that's all made up, it doesn't mean anything to me. And at that point, we then have the responsibility to take it on and turn it into, whatever we want to in terms of branding and things like that. But yeah, the intention is very much that they come here at the end of the work to talk us through what they found.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Councillor.
But Councillor Brockman, I mean, to be fair, again, that was always the intention, and to be fair to them, they would always come back because they need to get our input as well. It's not just them going, right, here it is. It's then, here's what we've discovered. You've got to have a think about this and decide where you go with it, which is the whole point of the exercise. Yeah. So.
Thank you.
But thank you. Right. Let me look at it. So, Councillor Buckley, then Councillor Sargent.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I'll just be fairly brief. It had always been my expectation that Hemingway Design would come back when they completed their work, and that's never been in any doubt in my mind. What I'm asking for is for them to come back, tell us what the issues have been as a consequence of the pandemic, and by come back, we're talking about them doing a Zoom meeting as we are doing tonight. And I think that is very simple. If it delays things by a few weeks, you've already said we're a month behind, other industries, other businesses are much further behind than that. Frankly, it's not going to make much difference. You're not going to get the results before May the 6th. So whether they come in May, June or July is not really an issue in the short term. Let's get them back. They can tell us what the issues have been. They may or may not share any of their findings beyond what we already have. But, like Councillor Brockman, I'm very concerned that any people feel ashamed of living in the borough. I can understand people not being happy about living in the borough for different reasons. But equally, if we start looking at those that are proud, that's not very...
Councillor Buckley, can I just say, we're going over very old ground here.
Sure.
And actually, the point you're missing is the overwhelming majority were happy, satisfied, or proud of the borough. Now, when you compare that with other places, that's actually quite good. So you know, I know there is a tendency, and it does disturb me, to talk Basildon down. I'm not doing that, and I hope you're not doing that.
I never have done, Chairman. I've always tried to talk Basildon up, and I think it should be talked up. And that's not a party political issue. The fact of the matter,
my point is, those figures are not alarming. The numbers of disaffected residents are not bad compared to many other places. So what Hemingway Design are doing is that, you know, they've looked at other areas that are probably far more challenged than Basildon is, and come up with, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure they have. They gave us some examples. I think Blackpool was.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, my focus, and I'm sure yours as well, is on Basildon. It's not on.
Correct. Yeah.
And to me, that's disappointing to see that. Well, disappointing is probably an understatement, to see anybody ashamed. But I can understand differing degrees of contentment.
No, but Councillor Buckley, we
don't need to debate it. All we need to do is to bring them back.
Councillor Buckley, we're going back to phase 1 research, not the research that's been done by Hemingway Design. So it's not relevant to this conversation. So can you move on to something that is relevant to this conversation, please?
Well, I've moved an amendment to the recommendations, which Councillor Sargent seconded, and obviously she's indicated to speak. I'd suggest after Councillor Sargent, we move to the vote on it.
Thank you. Councillor Sargent does have a hand up automatically. Do you want to speak, or do you want to move to the motion?
I'd like to speak, please, Chairman.
Thank you.
You just said to Buckley about he was going over phase 2 because Councillor Brockman raised the issue of the statistics. So I think that's why that happened. But certainly myself, I spoke about phase 2, and that's what I was concerned about, that we didn't have any information. I wasn't looking for a report, and that's why I'm going to second Councillor Buckley's amendment to the second recommendation, because it just makes sense. They came in June of last year. We have absolutely no evidence whatsoever, and I'm sure it's there, and of the activities. We've got a little bit in a report. It's a very brief report. So I believe that they should come back to us and say to us.
Sergeant, no one is saying they shouldn't come back. They will come back when the work is completed. But there's no point them coming back when the work isn't completed, which we've explained to you. So the report is based on where we are now, and we've said we will come back when the work is completed. So I'm not quite sure what the issue is here.
Chairman, you tell us off for interrupting you, and we do respect you as the chairman, but you keep interrupting us as well. But that's how we feel. That's what you say. But we feel that we would like them to come back and give us a little bit of an indication as to where it is, what the issues were, as Malcolm has said. And then once we've done that, they can go away and because that will give them a little bit direction of not what you think, about what this committee thinks. And I think this is the whole point of this whole committee. All it does is take the chairman's view. Whatever vote is taken tonight, whoever wins the vote, that's it. But Malcolm's made the point. Let's vote on his.
If I may make a suggestion, and I will defer to Joe on this one. The report is due back at the end of June. So why doesn't the committee meeting at the end of June have Hemingway Design and the report to come back? Then there's no need for any motion. That's what's going to happen. Am I missing something here, Joe?
No, I mean, the plan as it stands is for Hemingway to come back in to the June committee to talk through their findings.
So there you go.
Yeah. Well,
happy days.
Chairman, if I may, I just think that before they commit to the rest of the work, they should be coming to talk to us about where they are, what the issues are, and talking in the round about the work, that how it's been handicapped by the pandemic, etc. I don't need to repeat what we said earlier. I still intend to move my amendment, which will either stand or fall according to the vote of the committee.
Okay, Anne, can you just confirm something for me? When is the next ED Economic Development and Recovery Committee meeting scheduled for?
I don't believe that the diary's been confirmed yet. I think we're still finalising dates for future committees, but that should be finalised within the next few weeks. So
in other words, it won't be till the end of May, June at least. So at the very least, if this can be done by the end of June, we could have a meeting specifically to discuss that, and there's no need for a motion.
My motion stands, Chairman, so we should vote on it.
Anne, what's your advice there? Do we have to take this nonsense motion or not?
Yes, as Councillor Buckley has moved the motion, we will need to continue with a vote, please.
Okay, all right. Isn't life more complicated than it needs to be? In terms of the motion, which is, in fact, actually, Anne, can you help me out and read the motion out?
Yeah, of course, of course. So from what I understand, Councillor Buckley, you were saying, so where we are. Please
on the recommendations on page 87.
It is requires a second the committee requires a second presentation from Hemingway Design before the committee agrees to the use of the remainder of the £60,000 funding allocated in the 2020-21. Sorry, it's tired. I'm tired.
No,
yeah.
well.
And then the rest of that recommendation.
Accurate.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's accurate.
Thanks, Anne. Well done. I'm against. Councillor Davis.
Reasons I said last time, I'm against.
Councillor Kirkman.
Against.
Councillor Brockman.
Don't hate me, all of you. I'm abstaining on this one.
Okay. Councillor Buckley, I'm guessing I know where you're going to go.
Yeah, I should be for, Chairman.
Yeah. Councillor Sargent. Councillor Sargent.
Muting. Yes, I'm for.
And Councillor Jeffrey.
For.
Sorry. Councillor Jeffrey.
Can you hear me? Or Chairman?
Yeah, we got you there, Councillor Jeffrey. Thank you. Right, so it looks like 3-3. I am against the amendment. I assume we now have to, Anne, you know I'm not very good at this. Yep. We have to now vote on the original, the actual motion. As
the original recommendation, please.
Yeah. Hold on, let me find it. I mean, I assume everyone's seen it, so we don't need to read it out, do we?
And Councillor, with regards to your casting vote on the last vote.
It was against the amendment.
Thank you. Just to clarify, thank you.
Yeah, no, that always best. No. So we're now voting on the recommendations on page 18. Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm voting in favour. Councillor Davis.
Favour.
Councillor Kirkman.
In favour.
Thank you. Councillor Brockman.
On Joe's recommendation, in favour.
Thank you, Councillor Brockman. Councillor Buckley.
Against.
Councillor Sargent.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey.
Against.
Thank you very much, everyone. And just double check that we are through the business now. That's it. Anne, I can't hear you.
Oh, yes, sorry, that all items are completed, Chairman.
Well, I'd just like to say we've got through it all right. Bit bumpy ride here and there, but it's St. Patrick's Day, so a traditional Irish toast, and I would like to particularly acknowledge that the Irish community in Basildon, which is a very active one, and those of Irish descent. And if you're not privileged enough to be of Irish descent, you have my commiserations, but I'm sure you have other qualities anyway. And so may your troubles be less and your blessings be more. Sláinte. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.